Chapter 5011. Of course, it's Master and I Chin. Xiaohua smiled. After I left with Ziming, I encountered the hoodoo great god's sacrificial night. Thinking of all the strange things about Master and I Chin, we immediately returned and saw the tragedy in the valley. Unfortunately, we only saw the word 6 and didn't know who the murderer was. Ziming thought it was little 6. Of course, karma is strange. Later on, I met Six-Eared Macaque and took him away from Xiaoyu continent. I also found out that he was the murderer of Master and I Chin. That day, I wanted to kill him, but I remembered Master and I Chin's instructions and didn't do it. Who would have thought that so many things would happen? Hearing that Xiaohua didn't kill Six-Eared Macaque with his own hands, Nu Yecheng smiled slightly. However, when Xiaohua told him about the unimportant things in the Book of Sutras of Nirvana, he sighed again. Finally, after Xiaohua finished, Nu Yecheng stood up and looked at the setting sun. He took a deep breath and said, "Today's sun will eventually set, and tomorrow's sun will definitely rise. Tomorrow's sun will definitely not be today's sun. Senior, please promise me that Master and I Chin already lives in the hearts of millions of people in Meng Mountains. I am Nu Yecheng now, so please don't tell this secret to anyone else, including Ziming." Xiaohua stood up and looked at Nu Yecheng meaningfully. "What you said is actually what I'm thinking. If you're willing, I can also erase your memories, Lu Qingyu's and Yuehua's memories. Senior is so resourceful that I admire you." Nu Yecheng smiled. "However, you don't have to do that. If you can't let it go, even if you erase it, you might be able to remember it at any time. No method can compare to letting it go. Not bad, not bad." Nu Yecheng's words reminded Xiaohua of the water of oblivion. He clapped his hands and said, "With this heart, your cultivation will definitely reach great heights in this life." "I don't dare to have extravagant hopes," Nu Yecheng said respectfully. "I only know that I will take every step steadily." "Good." Xiaohua nodded. "If that's the case, there's no need for you to return to Meng Mountains. Just cultivate in Shenhua continent." "Yes, I understand," Nu Yecheng replied. "The sixth elder of the sect master's knowledge is as vast as the sea. To be able to listen to his teachings, this junior is already satisfied with this life. It doesn't matter if I return to Mount Meng or not." Done. Xiaohua let out a long sigh and rubbed his palms together. Another karma has been resolved. This old man's heart has become even more relaxed. "Thank you, elder." After Nu Yecheng bowed to express her gratitude, Xiaohua sent her into the Shenhua continent. However, Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he stood there with his arms crossed as he looked at the setting sun. He had an indescribable feeling in his heart as the karmic hand in the space rapidly expanded once again. Seeing that the night was about to pass and the morning star was about to light up, Xiaohua revealed a smile. He raised his hand and waved it. At the place where his finger touched, a spatial crack appeared. Just as Xiaohua's figure flashed, he saw from the corner of his eyes that in the northern part of the sky that was already somewhat dark, a rainbow-colored radiance flew across the sky. It was precisely flying towards the eastern part of the dark night. That rainbow-colored radiance appeared very dazzling in the dusk. Xiaohua's figure stopped, as he subconsciously looked towards the glow. This glow was clearly different from the usual glow seen in the Yilin continent. It carried a kind of indescribable holiness, and this holiness was different from the Buddha's light. Xiaohua immediately had an indescribable feeling when he saw it. Xiaohua had just looked at the radiance, but before he could see clearly who was in front of the radiance, a clear light similar to the clear sight technique of a Confucian cultivator crossed the space and landed on Xiaohua's body. "Oh!" Xiaohua was a little surprised and secretly exclaimed, "This? What kind of technique is this? Could it be that on the Yilin continent, other than Long Shenxi and Old Man Guqiong, there are other more powerful Taoist experts? A Golden Core 9th Refinement Stage expert from Xian Alliance? That's not right, this Dharma body doesn't seem to be a Taoist cultivator." As Xiaohua pondered, the seven-colored radiance in the sky changed direction and flew towards Xiaohua. When it flew closer, Xiaohua could clearly see that it was a beautiful woman with a serene expression. This woman's face was round like a full moon, A pair of pitch-black eyes flashed with coldness. Her small cherry lips seemed to be a little captivating red. She had a straight, jade-like nose and crescent moon-like black eyebrows. A kind of indescribable calmness spontaneously arose. On her originally sculpted face, there was a red mole the size of a rice grain on the left side of her eyebrows. This was originally a flaw, but it gave the woman a kind of charm. That charm was faint, and not only did it make people not dare to blaspheme her, but it also made people who saw the woman's cold eyes feel a trace of warmth. The woman was dressed in a white robe that flashed with a faint luster. Her long beautiful hair was like a waterfall that draped over her back, and the curls were the ripples of the water. The woman flew in the air, and there were no fluctuations of mana around her. Instead, there was a layer of extremely dim, holy white light that protected the woman. This white light was like a protective brilliance, and was extremely tenacious. However, it still couldn't block Xiaohua's gaze. Xiaohua could already see that the woman's body was transparent, as if it was made of crystal. Even though the woman's hands were as soft as a flower and she was lightly pinching in front of him, Xiaohua could clearly see that there were several layers of light feathers stacked together on the woman's back. An indescribable light was flowing between the light feathers. Angel? Xiaohua's heart gave birth to an inexplicable feeling, and he secretly cried out, "This? What's going on? When did the Yilin continent become so chaotic? What Yao clan, what Devil clan, what Angel clan all appeared at once?" For you. The woman flew closer and stood there elegantly. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked at Xiaohua, and her eyebrows slightly furrowed, as if she was vexed because she couldn't see through Xiaohua. That clear and melodious voice, like a lark, sounded in Xiaohua's ears. "This one is Xiaohua of the Taoist sect, and my Buddhist name is Taoist Master Xiao." Xiaohua slightly smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. "How should I address you, fellow Taoist?" The woman coldly replied, "My Tao is not your Tao. People of different Tao cannot make plans together. You don't have to address me as fellow Taoist. My name is Zhang Jie." Immediately after, the woman's eyebrows furrowed, and she seemed to ponder for a moment, then shook her head and said, "Your name is Xiaohua? How come I've never heard of your name before? With your cultivation, I should know, right?" Xiaohua heard this angel called Zhang Jie. One moment, I, the next, I, and the next moment, I, clearly not from the Yilin continent. Thus, Xiaohua slightly smiled and said, "Zhang Jie, you are not a cultivator of my Taoist sect. How could you know this one's name? This one asks you, what kind of angel are you from the holy light realm?" Hearing this, Zhang Jie's originally ice-cold face suddenly showed astonishment. Her small cherry mouth slightly opened and she cried out, "How could you tell?" Following Zhang Jie's voice, "Wang." A buzzing sound came from her body, and the white robe draped around her suddenly turned into a pure and holy light screen. As the light screen soared into the sky, a seven-colored halo suddenly appeared on Zhang Jie's back. The halo was like a blooming flower, and a pair of 10-zhang-long wings slowly spread out. At this moment, the wings were already clear, and there were actually 7 layers. Between each layer, a dense and pure aura leaked out. Moreover, as the 7 layers of wings flapped, all the pure and holy light condensed into a huge scepter. Woo-woo! A strange chanting sound came out of nowhere, and it enveloped the surroundings several hundred li. On top of the scepter, there was a strange solemnity and a kind of omnipresent authority. Like a Taoist sex restriction, it imprisoned Xiaohua in layers. The entire space was filled with a kind of milky white, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was blocked by this milky white color. At the same time, Zhang Jie's handsome appearance began to blur, and a kind of transparency gradually covered that kind of beauty. What was special was that Zhang Jie's pair of eyes gradually lost the emotions of a human, and a milky white dot of light shone from within. In just a moment, it had already rushed out, and Zhang Jie lightly reprimanded, "Evil creature, why are you still not showing your true form?" 2 pigeon-like figures rushed out of her eyes, and flapped their wings as they charged toward Xiaohua. "Hee." Xiaohua lightly smiled, and raised his hand and said, "On my Yilin continent, among all the living beings, you actually dare to call this old man an evil creature? If this old man is an evil creature, then what are you? Where Xiaohua's finger landed, the space let out a kacha. Crisp sound, and it was like glass shattering. The space that was enveloped by the pure and holy light and the scepter's authority instantly shattered. The sealing aura from before also shattered into pieces. What was special was that these cracks spread out extremely quickly, and before Zhang Jie could react, they had already surrounded him. Zhang Jie was shocked. His transparent face and his peerlessly beautiful appearance appeared once again. His beautiful eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and it really made one's heart ache. Following Zhang Jie's exclamation, the shattered fragments of the scepter fell into the 7 layers of light feathers. As the light feathers spread out once again, woo-woo. Sobbing sounds suddenly rang out, and the scepter turned into 7 milky white droplets. They were like tears, and those tears were filled with compassion, destruction, and supreme will. Within 1,000 miles, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth instantly turned into nothingness. What kind of technique is this? Xiaohua was shocked, because he already had a body of laws. Wherever his gaze landed, he could see the laws of all things. And when his gaze landed on the 7 tiers, other than the torrential bitter water, he also saw men and women in strange clothes howling in grief. Battles that left corpses lying in 1,000 miles erupted under the bitter water, and a kind of power that could destroy heaven and earth was brewing in this bitter water. This power might not be comparable to Su Ji's or Fairy Xingyu's, but if it were to land on the Yilin continent, even Xiaohua, a supreme cultivator who had already reached the 10th grade of elemental energy, might not be able to withstand it. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, and reward. Thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50:12. However, before Xiaohua could be surprised, there was a ka-cha-cha. In the sky, an invisible sound of thunder was heard, and the restriction of heaven and earth fell from the sky. Before Zhang Jie's 7 tiers could escape from her light feather, it immediately turned into fragments, and all kinds of misery and mercy were also shattered. A look of regret appeared on Zhang Jie's surprised face. However, before she could retract her light feathers and activate her divine ability again, a look of realization appeared on her pure and holy face. Because at the same time that the 7 tiers shattered, the power of Xiaohua's finger, the spatial crack that could kill all things in space, suddenly stopped in front of Zhang Jie's 7 light feathers. It didn't hurt the light at all. Xiaohua clearly did not have the intention to kill Zhang Jie. Since she understood Xiaohua's meaning, Zhang Jie did not use the holy light again, and Xiaohua did not use the sword gourd that had already touched Zhang Jie's mind. However, Xiaohua still looked at Zhang Jie with some caution, because he understood that Zhang Jie was definitely not as cute and harmless as he thought. Her strength might surpass his, and if not for the restriction of the laws of heaven and earth on the Yilin continent, he might not be her opponent. As the two waited for a moment, the spatial crack gradually disappeared, and the light around Zhang Jie's body faded. Zhang Jie crossed her arms to protect her chest, and the light feather that had been retracted trembled slightly, like the wings of a frightened dove. You're actually so powerful? Zhang Jie looked at Xiaohua in disbelief, and said in surprise, "You have such strength. Why are you still in the human world?" Xiaohua did not understand the Holy Light Realm and the angels of the Holy Light Realm. Zhang Jie was the first angel he had seen. He had only heard some secrets from the Mahavairakana Buddha, but he knew from the tone of the Mahavairakana Buddha that although the Buddhist kingdom and the Holy Light Realm were enemies, the Mahavairakana Buddha still held the angels in high esteem. Therefore, he still had the most initial good impression of the angels, and this so-called Zhang Jie, because Xiaohua knew that whether it was the Buddhist sect or the angels, they all had their own beliefs and their own bottom line. And Xiaohua also believed that regardless of the bottom line, as long as it was a cultivator with a bottom line, they should be respected, regardless of whether the other party was a friend or an enemy. In particular, when Zhang Jie saw that his strength was restricted by the Yilin continent, and when he saw Xiaohua's goodwill, he immediately stopped. Clearly, he was the kind of cultivator who did not want to provoke others. Therefore, when facing Zhang Jie, Xiaohua felt as if he was facing a bodhisattva of the Buddhist sect. Holding the most basic and kind attitude, he rubbed his nose and smiled. Zhang Jie, shouldn't this old man be the one asking you this question? Why aren't you staying in the sacred light realm? Why have you come to my Dao sect's Yilin continent? Angels were not good at lying. Faced with this mysterious human cultivator who seemed to be no weaker than her, Zhang Jie was a little hesitant. She did not dare to reveal her origins for fear of bringing trouble to the holy light realm. However, she could not speak blindly either. For a moment, she was a little embarrassed. The more Zhang Jie acted like this, the more Xiaohua smiled in his heart and waved his hand. Since that's the case, it's fine if you don't say it. This old man has the Buddha fruit from the Buddhist sect. Moreover, this old man's good friend is also a disciple of the Buddhist sect. If you tell this old man about his past, this old man will also be burdened. It's better not to say it. When Zhang Jie heard this, she could not help but turn pale with fright. In a flash, she actually flew back more than 10 li. It can't be. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This old man knows that the Buddhist kingdom and the sacred light realm are enemies. If this old man wanted to make a move, I would not have stopped just now. Since this old man is open and honest, I have no intention of making a move against you. When Zhang Jie heard this, her face turned red again. The light wings on her back fluttered, and she quietly flew back a few li. Then she let out a long sigh of relief and said, "Thank you, Taoist Xiao." However, it was only for a moment. Zhang Jie raised her head again and asked curiously, "Taoist Xiao, how did you get the Buddha fruit from the Buddhist sect? Why can't I see the Buddha light and light from Taoist Xiao? What's the cultivation of your good friend?" Sweat. Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. He secretly said, "It's said that female cultivators have a gossipy heart. It seems that this angel is the same." Xiaohua naturally wouldn't say it out loud. He only smiled and said, "I was originally a disciple of Dao sect, but Buddhist sect insisted on giving me a Buddha fruit just because I did some good deeds to the world. It was so nondescript that of course you couldn't see it. As for my good friend's cultivation, I don't know." Speaking of this, Xiaohua asked curiously, "By the way, where are you going?" Zhang Jie's face turned red again. He did not immediately answer. Obviously, he did not want to lie. I won't ask any more." Xiaohua laughed. He raised his finger and drew a line in the void. A space crack appeared, and Xiaohua's figure flashed and floated into it. Then he turned back and said, "This is the Yilin continent. There are many cultivators of the Dao sect, and you are an angel of the holy light realm. In their eyes, you are a vile creature. Although this old man will not make a move against you, I can't guarantee that old man Gu Qiong, Taoist Ji Yen, Bright Moon Householder, and the others will not make a move against you. You must be careful. Oh, if you meet them and you don't want to kill them, and you can't escape, you can mention my name. Maybe they will know what to do." After saying this, Xiaohua's figure fell into the void and disappeared. Zhang Jie flapped his wings and flew to the void. With a flap of his wings, countless holy light swords rushed into the void, and the void was torn apart again. Then, Zhang Jie's eyes flashed with white light and swept across the void. After a while, Zhang Jie said in a low voice, "What kind of Dao sect's divine ability did Taoist Xiao use? Why can't I see the spatial imprint of his teleportation? Could it be that he really came from the immortal realm?" Zhang Jie stood in midair for a long time. When the holy light dissipated and the moon rose, he raised his head slightly and looked in a direction. He said curiously, "Strange, why is he here? Could it be that he still hasn't given up?" After saying this, Zhang Jie flapped his wings again and flew toward the Wuming mountain range in the east, which looked like the outline of a monster. Xiaohua landed on the envoy's flying boat without attracting anyone's attention. Xiaohua sat down cross-legged and put away the dream mirage butterfly. He frowned and said to himself, "Damn it, why is the Yilin continent so chaotic? It is not as pure as my Xiaoyu continent. Even an angel from the holy light realm has appeared." However, when he thought of this, Xiaohua laughed involuntarily. When he left the Xiaoyu continent, he only had the strength of a Yuanying realm cultivator and the things he could see were few. However, even with the strength of a Yuanying realm cultivator, he had seen demons, and even Buddhists. Now that he was already a sovereign of the human race, it wouldn't be a big deal to see another angel, right? His way of thinking was favoring one and discriminating against the other. But this Zhang Jie, what is his purpose in coming to the Yilin continent? Xiao Hua's eyes turned slightly. Could it be to find the sacred weapon suppressed by the demon sovereign's corpse? What is the origin of this sacred weapon that is worthy of a seven-winged throne angel coming to the mortal world? However, this seven-winged throne angel is very powerful. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua stared blankly and shook his head. No, the Holy Light Realm is a realm on par with the Buddhist kingdom. A seven-winged throne angel is also a divine existence in the Holy Light Realm. How could it only have such strength? If Zhang Jie was really a throne angel, I'm afraid even Su Ji would not be his opponent. How could this Xiao scare him? Or is he injured? Is he unable to activate the holy light? Or is he a one-winged angel of the lowest level? But how could there be 7 layers of light feathers? No matter what, many of his light feathers are blurry. I'm afraid he really is injured. Xiao Hua let his imagination run wild for a moment. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the bottom of his heart. Namo Methria Buddha, Xiao Tanyue, this seat did not disappoint you. Before leaving the Yilin continent, I finally finished modifying the 9 transformations golden pill cultivation technique. Xiao Hua was shocked. He said in disbelief, Buddha Lord, are you sure? You really finished modifying the 9 transformations golden pill cultivation technique? This is probably the first Taoist cultivation technique that was modified by a Buddha Lord of the Buddhist sect? Back then, Xiao Hua felt that the Taoist sect's 9 transformations golden pill sounded similar to the Buddhist sect's 9 transformations golden body, so he casually threw the cultivation technique to the Maitreya Buddha. However, he really did not expect that the Maitreya Buddha would really finish modifying the 9 transformations golden pill cultivation technique during the few years he was comprehending the origin of water. This seat will not go out. Tanyue, come in and take a look. The Maitreya Buddha replied with a smile. Xiao Hua's mind entered the Shenhua continent and turned into Jade Archive Xiao Hua. He saw the Maitreya Buddha sitting cross-legged on the 9-grade lotus platform. In the distance, the Thunderbolt Immortal had turned into lightning, and a seed of profound meaning was sprouting in his body. Looking at the other side, the Celestial had also manifested 3 heads and 6 arms. Pillars of light were spewing out of his mouth like dragons. His originally golden body was now filled with a water-blue luster. I understand. Jade Archive Xiao Hua said with a smile. The Maitreya Buddha put his palms together and said, Let me tell you, fellow Taoist. This 9 transformations golden pill cultivation technique is essentially a Taoist sect's golden pill cultivation technique. However, it can be borrowed from the Buddhist sect's 9 transformations golden body cultivation technique. It is also mixed with the bone tempering technique of the ancient Celestial. Therefore, this seat asked the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Celestial to deduce together. It has nothing to do with me. The Celestial did not wait for the Maitreya Buddha to finish speaking and shouted, I was refining the origin of water, and the Buddha Lord forcibly took the bone tempering technique from me. Buddha Lord, you forgot that you also took the demon clan's cultivation technique of Feng Wu. The Thunderbolt Immortal's voice was like thunder, rumbling in the sky above the Shenhua continent. Namo Maitreya Buddha, you are right. The Profound Alliance has the 39 golden body cultivation technique, which is derived from the 9 transformations golden pill. There are some traces of the demon clan's cultivation technique, so this seat also borrowed some of the demon clan's cultivation technique. The Maitreya Buddha smiled and raised his hand to hand a few jade slips to Jade Archive Xiao Hua. He said, Tanyue, you can take a look. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5013. In fact, there was no need to take the jade slip. Xiao Hua fell into the space, and the knowledge of Buddha Maitreya, the world venerable, and the others had already entered Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua instantly knew all the cultivation methods and secret techniques. However, Xiaohua still took the jade slip, and his eyes flashed with 9 colors. After reading it, he sighed, "Our Tao sect's inheritance is really a bit messy. First, there was the Tao Venerable who taught us the nascent soul cultivation method, then there was the Tao Ancestor who taught us the primordial spirit cultivation method, and now there is the Tao Master who taught us the 9 transformation golden core cultivation method. The primordial spirit cultivation method seems to be borrowed from Confucianism, and the golden core cultivation method seems to be borrowed from Buddhism. It seems that they are not the real cultivation methods of our Tao sect. Perhaps only the Tao Venerable's nascent soul cultivation method is really passed down from ancient times." Unfortunately, when Xiaohua said this, his body suddenly shook as if he thought of something, and his face unexpectedly showed a shocked expression. Buddha Maitreya and the world venerable's face showed mercy, but he did not speak. After a long while, Xiaohua said in a low voice, "If I had not seen an angel before, I would have thought that the nascent soul cultivation method was unique to our Tao sect. But today I saw Zhang Jie. Isn't she completely composed of spiritual bodies? It's just that she is condensed from holy light, and our Tao sect's nascent soul is condensed from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Could it be that our Tao sect doesn't have its own cultivation method?" "Not necessarily," Thunder Immortal shouted disdainfully. "Or maybe Buddhism, Confucianism, Sacred Light Realm, they all borrowed our Tao sect's cultivation method? But if so, why does our Tao sect have Tao Venerable, Tao Ancestor, and Tao Master, 3 ancestors?" Xiaohua asked. "The title of Tao Venerable is similar to the title of World Venerable, the title of Tao Master is similar to the title of Sacred Lord, and the incarnation of Tao Ancestor is the disappeared Confucian sage." "Ha, fellow Taoist." The celestial in the distance laughed heartlessly. "Aren't you thinking too much? This is a secret from ancient times. What does it have to do with us? So what if my Tao sect is a sect that was created using other sects as a reference? Could it be that only Confucians, Buddhas, and angels could exist in this world, and Taoists were not allowed to exist? Could it be that with the Heaven Alliance, Tao Alliance, and Profound Alliance in the Yilin mainland, my fortune gate is not allowed to appear and the Profound Alliance is not allowed to perish? Survival of the fittest, that's all there is to it." Fellow Taoist is right." Jade Archive Xiaohua laughed and looked around. "So what? Didn't our Tao sect suppress the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect, and the demon race with the power of our sect? Forcing the immortal world to join hands and set up an immortal array to separate the Tao sect? Take a look at our cultivation. Is it inferior to that of the Confucian cultivators, Buddhists, demons, and even angels? When I walk on my own path, I don't care where it begins. When I walk on my own path, I only look at where it ends." "Sandalwood," Maitreya Buddha said with a smile, "you are a Taoist, but what are we? So you're still wrong. No matter if it's Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, demons, or even holy light, they are all laws. Isn't this the so-called origin of all laws? The laws of heaven and earth, the beginning of human relations, the origin of Tao, the beginning of faith." Jade Archive Xiaohua's body glowed with 9 colors, and various profound meanings bloomed like green lotuses. After an unknown period of time, Jade Archive Xiaohua suddenly opened his eyes and said with a smile, "There's movement in the quiet room. I'm afraid we've reached the Wuming Mountain range. Thunderbolt Immortal, I'll have to trouble you to go and pass the cultivation method of the 9 transformations golden pill and the 39 golden body to Yangxia. Our trip to the Yilin mainland can be considered complete." "I don't dare to go." Thunderbolt Immortal hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Just a single Tao seed is enough to make I want to die. It's better to let Heaven Man go." "Damn it, can't you see that I'm refining the origin of water?" Heaven Man glared at Thunderbolt Immortal. "I'm not coveting your Tao seed." "Namo Maitreya Buddha." Maitreya Buddha said with a bitter smile, "Do you still want me to go? You go? If you go, you'll be slapped to death by the Taoist master." Heaven Man laughed. You exposed him, and you're the future Taoist master of the Buddhist sect. How can he let you live? Then let I go. As he spoke, Taoist Witch, who was usually quiet and had been in low spirits recently, appeared. Jade Archive Xiaohua knew that Taoist Witch was worried about the inheritance of the Wuming Mountain range. He nodded and said, Then I'll have to trouble you. No problem. Taoist Witch raised his hand and grabbed the jade scroll in Jade Archive Xiaohua's hand. In a flash, he disappeared. Fellow Taoist. Huang Tong and Feng Wu appeared just as Taoist Witch left. Huang Tong looked worriedly at the place where Taoist Witch disappeared and said, I'll go with Taoist Witch. Seeing that a soul cultivator and a demon were so close, Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. Very good. Go and come back quickly. Seeing that Huang Tong had also left, Feng Wu said strangely, Fellow Taoist, you're too careless. We're about to enter the Wuming Mountain range. How could you let Taoist Witch leave? What about the Wuming Mountain range? We might need his help. Yang Xia's Mei Xianling is not too far away from the Wuming Mountain range. We'll be there in a short while using our spatial escape technique. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, Taoist Witch rarely takes the initiative to volunteer. How could I not allow it? Since the descendants of the Yi family can pass through the Wuming Mountain range, why can't we? Moreover, Taoist Witch had a witch body, which was something we couldn't compare to. Now that I have comprehended the laws of heaven and earth, my main body can also condense a witch body. Even without Taoist Witch, I can still enter the Wuming Mountain range. Then, Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and smiled. Bai Fei is calling for I outside the meditation room. I'll go out first. Fellow Taoist, let's go. The clones bowed and waited for Jade Archive Xiaohua to leave before continuing to cultivate. The clones and Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't seem to notice that outside the space where Xinhua continent was, faint ripples were slowly forming like bubbles in the sea. Jade Archive Xiaohua flew out of the space and turned back into his consciousness. He looked at a yellow talisman that was 3 fingers wide in front of him and flicked it lightly. Pa! The yellow talisman exploded, and Bai Fei's voice could be heard laughing. Jinren Xiao, you can come out now. Hee hee. Xiaohua smiled slightly, and the token in his hand emitted a faint light. The light rushed out, and the door of the meditation room quietly opened. He saw Bai Fei standing there with a smile on his face. He opened his mouth and said with a smile, Congratulations, Jinren Xiao. Congratulations, Jinren Xiao, ah? Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, Fellow Taoist Bai, where did the congratulations come from? Jinren Xiao has been in seclusion for many years. You must have been cultivating a secret technique. I knocked on the door several times, but there was no response. I think your cultivation must have improved greatly. Bai Fei said with a smile, Isn't this great news? Xiaohua naturally knew that Bai Fei didn't knock on the door at all. He also knew that the secret technique Bai Fei was talking about was the jade scroll Bai Fei gave him. He also knew that Bai Fei was reminding him not to forget that the technique he cultivated in seclusion was given by Bai Fei. Seeing Bai Fei so calculating, Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked around and said in a low voice, Fellow Taoist Bai, I can't compare to fellow Taoist talent. I have been in seclusion for many years, and I feel that my cultivation has improved. But if you check carefully, it seems like it's still in the same place. I can't understand it. Bai Fei smiled slightly, as if he had already expected Xiaohua to say this. He replied, Jinren Xiao, don't forget that this technique was given to me by the #1 person in the Yilin continent, Senior Zhang Xiaohua. Bai Fei also shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he didn't know anything about this. You can. Chapter 50:14. On the deck, Beauty Yu and Zhuang Chen stood quietly in a corner. Seeing Xiaohua and Bai Fei come out, Zhuang Chen waved at them. What's going on? Bai Fei walked to Zhuang Chen and asked in a low voice. Zhuang Chen shook his head and replied, I don't know. Beauty Yu said, I came out early and have already asked the disciples of Liu Immortal Alliance. In order to go to the Lost Land, Liu Immortal Alliance sent 5 special envoys to find 5 groups of cultivators and led the branches to 5 places for selection. We are just one of them. Just before we arrived at Yuanzhong Mountain, the other 4 selected cultivators rushed to our flying boat. Moreover, I also heard that only our group of cultivators was unlucky. First, the number of people they found was small. During the selection, there was a collapse of the maze, so the number of people who passed was even smaller. The other 4 groups each had thousands of people who passed the selection. Bai Fei nodded and said, "If that's the case, then it's normal." Zhuang Chen was stunned and asked curiously, "Why?" Bai Fei looked at Zhuang Chen and said with a smile, "Liu Immortal Alliance went to the Heavenly Alliance to find cultivators with special magical powers to go to the Lost Land. If only 100 nascent soul cultivators like us went, then wouldn't that be the biggest joke in the world? If I were the leader of Liu Immortal Alliance, these thousands of people would not be enough. I would also find 100,000 nascent soul cultivators in the Immortal Alliance." Speaking of this, Bai Fei stopped again and thought for a moment. 100,000 nascent soul cultivators are a bit too many. Not to mention whether the transmission tunnel in the Wuming Mountain range can withstand it. These 100,000 nascent soul cultivators will attract the attention of the soul cultivators in the Wuming Mountain range. At most 50,000. Damn it. When he heard up to here, Xiaohua's expression changed slightly. It wasn't just that. The face of Bai Fei, who seemed to be in control, had turned ghastly pale as well. Others might not know what Bai Fei was thinking, but Xiaohua was extremely clear about it, and he couldn't help but curse in his heart. This failure Immortal Alliance truly deserves death. On the Dawn Rain continent, Foundation establishment cultivators are everywhere. There are very few Golden Core and Nascent Soul cultivators. The sect masters of the 3 major sects in the state of Shi are only late Nascent Soul cultivators. As for the Imperial Thunder sect's sect master, Qian Lazy, although I have never seen him before, he is only a Nascent Soul cultivator. The Failure Valley Immortal Alliance sent 50,000 nascent soul cultivators at once. Even if only 1/10 of them survived, it would still be more than 1,000 nascent soul cultivators. 1,000 nascent soul cultivators would probably sweep through the entire Dawn Rain continent. It's no wonder that Bright Moon Householder said that Lian Feng was quite ambitious. Hee, fellow Taoist Bai, you're overthinking things. Zhuang Chen suddenly smiled and said, "Nascent soul stage cultivators may not be considered much in the Yilan continent, but they are still mid-level cultivators. How could the Immortal Alliance allow so many nascent soul stage cultivators to enter the Wuming Mountain range? In my opinion, 20,000 nascent soul stage cultivators and 30,000 gold core stage cultivators should be enough." As he spoke, several more nascent soul stage cultivators walked out of the cabin. The nascent soul stage cultivator at the front had a huge body and wasn't wearing an ordinary Taoist robe. Instead, he wore a short robe with his thick arms and legs exposed. Even his chest was exposed, revealing a patch of thick black chest hair. Looking at the face of this cultivator, it was just as ferocious. There was a finger-wide scar on the left side of his face, revealing red flesh and blood. Coupled with the ominous glint flashing in his eyes, if an ordinary person were to see him at night, they would probably faint from fright. When this cultivator walked onto the deck, his face was filled with disdain. Then, he looked around and his gaze immediately fell on Beauty Yu's curvaceous body. With greed and lust in his eyes, the cultivator licked his lips with his scarlet tongue and stroked the black hair in front of his chest. Then he swaggered over. Bai Fei was originally speaking in a low voice, but when he heard the footsteps, he couldn't help but turn around. When he saw the cultivator's appearance, his expression changed greatly and he cursed in a low voice, "Damn it! Why is he here?" Xiaohuan naturally also saw this ferocious nascent soul stage cultivator and asked curiously, "Who is he? Is there a problem?" However, Bai Fei didn't answer Xiaohua. Instead, he took a few steps forward to increase the distance between him and Beauty Yu. Just as Bai Fei stood still, the nascent soul stage cultivator and the 4 people behind him had already arrived. The 5 of them surrounded Xiaohua and the others. The nascent soul stage cultivator in the front opened his mouth and cupped his hands towards Beauty Yu. This old man is in Yushan, ancestor Jade Fat. How should I address this fellow Taoist? Beauty Yu glanced at ancestor Jade Fat and didn't answer. Instead, she turned to look at the center of the deck. There, Du Peng was talking to the 4 spirit severing stage cultivators in a low voice. The 5 of them had a faint smile on their faces. Damn it! An early nascent soul stage cultivator next to ancestor Jade Fat cursed. Didn't you hear my ancestor ask you something? Shoo! Seeing that Beauty Yu ignored ancestor Jade Fat, Bai Fei couldn't help but look into the distance and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, could it be that you think your words are more important than the special envoy? We are preparing to listen to the special envoy's teachings. How would we have the time to greet you?" Hee hee. Ancestor Jade Fat reluctantly shifted his gaze away from Beauty Yu and looked at Bai Fei. His gaze even swept past Xiao Hua and Zhuang Qin. The expression in his eyes was not without threat. Then he looked at Bai Fei again and laughed. "Your words, are you threatening this old man?" Bai Fei shrugged and shook his head. "Fellow Taoist, this is the special envoy's flying ship. Even if I had 10 times the courage, I wouldn't dare to threaten fellow Taoist. I'm just reminding fellow Taoist. This old man has ears. Do I need you to worry about me?" Ancestor Jade Fat sneered. The other 4 nascent soul stage cultivators slightly staggered and tacitly blocked Xiao Hua and the others, separating them one by one. Ooh! At this moment, a violent wind suddenly blew in the distant sky. A black cloud was born from the horizon. However, that black cloud was already close in a moment. Everyone could see clearly that it was actually a huge black eagle. That black eagle's wings were several hundred feet long, as if it wanted to cover the entire sky. On the back of the black shadow, a bald cultivator stood barefoot. The sunlight shone on his body, causing layers of golden light to flicker. The pressure of a middle body integration stage cultivator was released without any restraint. He was truly like a diamond. The black eagle spread its wings and crossed thousands of miles in a flash. Although the pressure that was like the falling of the heavenly river didn't come close, everyone on the special envoy's flying ship couldn't help but tremble at the same time. Disciples. Du Peng and the other 4 spirit severing stage cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They shouted, "Quickly prepare to welcome Vice Alliance leader Xiong." Then, the 5 of them rushed into the sky to welcome him. When the nascent soul stage cultivator named Ancestor Jade Fat saw this, she didn't dare to be nosy. She fiercely glared at Bai Fei and the others, then lifted her leg and walked to another place. There, several nascent soul stage cultivators took advantage of Du Peng and the others flying high and hurriedly waved at Ancestor Jade Fat and the others. Damn it! Bai Fei saw those nascent soul stage cultivators waving and cursed in a low voice. Xiao Hua slightly frowned and asked in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Bai, do you know those nascent soul stage cultivators?" This Bai is a cultivator of the Illusion Immortal Alliance. I don't know much about the cultivators of the Failure Valley Immortal Alliance. Bai Fei's gaze fell on those nascent soul stage cultivators who were whispering and glancing over. His face revealed a trace of vigilance and disgust as he replied, "But this Bai has heard a little about these notorious nascent soul stage cultivators." Notorious? Xiao Hua was stunned, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Notorious? Bai Fei didn't hide the disgust in his mouth and replied, "That Ancestor Jade Fat just now is a cultivator who is proficient in the shady business of gathering yin to nourish yang. He came from the Heong sect and had already raped and killed a Foundation establishment female disciple when he was a gold core stage cultivator. However, because he was the direct bloodline of an elder of the Heong sect, not only did he not take his life, he even went into seclusion to reflect on his mistakes and advance his cultivation. Then, he was again ***********. Xiao Hua felt a wave of disgust for no reason. He waved his hand and said, "There's no need to talk about this person. What about those few?" "Those few?" Bai Fei sneered and said, "Those few are each more powerful than the other. Look at that late nascent soul stage cultivator with a red face. He's called Ancestor Heart Devourer and specializes in eating people's hearts, especially the hearts of beautiful female cultivators. That one with a face as white as jade is called Jade-Faced Scholar. His name sounds very refined, but he loves torture the most. Any cultivator who offends him, regardless of gender, will be skinned. In private, everyone calls him Skin-Flaying Scholar. Look at that one. Bai Fei seemed to have done his homework very well. Not only did he point out those few notorious nascent soul stage cultivators of the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance, he also pointed out the evil deeds of the Illusion Immortal Alliance's nascent soul stage cultivators further away. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's forehead was covered in sweat. Damn it, damn it, damn it. At this moment, Xiao Hua finally understood that other than wanting to occupy the Dawn Rain continent, Lian Feng also wanted to use the Dawn Rain continent to deal with these notorious nascent soul stage cultivators. It was the same attitude as the Heaven Alliance towards Lian Feng. It's fine as long as you don't commit evil within my Heaven Alliance. As for how you commit evil in the Dawn Rain continent, it'll depend on whether you have the ability to pass through the Wuming Mountain range. How many nascent soul stage cultivators could Bai Fei know? He could see the savagery of these nascent soul stage cultivators. Then what about the other nascent soul stage cultivators that Bai Fei didn't know? Alas, there's no need to think too much. Xiao Hua sighed and inwardly pondered. Other than this Xiao and Bai Fei who sincerely want to return to the Dawn Rain continent, among the several tens of thousands of cultivators on Envoy Man's flying ship, who else sincerely wants to go to the Dawn Rain continent? And which cultivator with a normal mind, after obtaining a cultivation technique, would still want to go to the lost place and risk their lives? Those who want to go to the lost place are definitely not people with a pure mind. Their goals are all unspeakable. Their arrival at the Dawn Rain continent is definitely not a blessing for the Dawn Rain continent. It can only be a disaster for the Dawn Rain continent. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, collect a collection, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 50-15. Xiao Hua was furious. He looked up at the sky and saw that the Black Eagle had already landed. Du Peng and the other spirit-severing cultivators bowed. Vice Alliance leader Xiong casually stepped down from the Black Eagle. Xiao Hua looked at the mid-body integration stage cultivator who had been possessed by the demon race and coldly thought, as for the disciples sent by the Defeat Immortal Alliance to the Lost Land, there's Vice Alliance leader Xiong who was possessed by the demon race and a spirit-severing envoy who was possessed by the demon race. Can they still be normal human cultivators? Previously, Xiao Hua felt a bit of regret. He felt that he shouldn't have wasted so much time in the Wuming Mountain range, but now, he didn't regret it at all. If he hadn't endured until now, how could he have known about the Defeat Immortal Alliance's plan? How could he have known that the identities of the nascent soul cultivators heading to the Dawn Rain continent were so complicated? Even if the chances of these fiends passing through the Wuming Mountain range were very small, once they reached the Dawn Rain continent, they would be a disaster. Xiao Hua absolutely couldn't allow this to happen. While Xiao Hua was thinking, Bai Fei narrowed his eyes and didn't say a word. He seemed to be thinking about something. Xiao Hua retracted his gaze and glanced at the gloomy Bai Fei. He nodded to himself. He knew that Bai Fei was extremely astute and would fuss over anything. If it was something that was disadvantageous to him, he would definitely not do it. If it was something that was beneficial to him, he would rack his brains and do it even if he had to sharpen his head. He had many shortcomings, but Bai Fei's attitude was still quite clear. Based on this alone, Xiao Hua wouldn't make things difficult for Bai Fei. After a few more breaths, Vice Alliance leader Xiong landed with big strides. Du Peng and the others carefully followed behind. Although Vice Alliance leader Xiong had already retracted his combined pressure, his undisguised arrogance still suppressed the gazes of all the cultivators on the Special Envoy's flying ship. Vice Alliance leader Xiong looked around and frowned. Why are there so few people? Vice Alliance leader Xiong's tone was clearly unfriendly. Du Peng and the other spirit-severing cultivators' faces tightened and they all looked at Du Peng. Du Peng helplessly flew a few steps and bowed. Reporting to Vice Alliance leader, Disciple was ordered by Alliance leader to lead a group of nascent soul cultivators to the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Lands maze formation. Unfortunately, we encountered the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Lands Heavenly Wind. Shut up. Before Du Peng could finish speaking, Vice Alliance Master Xiong's expression changed, and he roared, "Why are you telling me so many reasons?" Could it be that he wanted to push the blame to the Alliance Master? Are you trying to push the blame to the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Land? Du Peng hurriedly knelt down, his body trembling as he said, "Disciple doesn't dare, disciple doesn't dare." Vice Alliance leader Xiong raised his leg and kicked Du Peng's shoulder. With a cracking sound, Du Peng's shoulder caved in. Du Peng's body was tumbling in the air. He let out some miserable shrieks, but it was obvious that he was trying his best to endure it. Heading to the Lost Land to find a cultivation path for the disciples of my Liu Immortal Alliance was personally planned by the Alliance Master. Vice Alliance Master Xiong continued to speak loudly. My Liu Immortal Alliance spent hundreds of years and a lot of manpower on this matter. Now, you actually messed it up. Tell me, how should I punish you? Vice Alliance leader Xiong was so ruthless that he wanted to punish the special envoy without saying a single word to the cultivators on the special envoy's flying ship. For a moment, all the cultivators felt as if they were walking on thin ice. No one dared to breathe. Vice Alliance leader Xiong. The other 4 special envoys who were distracted didn't dare to be negligent. They hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. Although Du Peng lost too many cultivators in the selection this time, he worked hard for this matter. We all saw it with our own eyes. As the saying goes, if there is no merit, there is hard work. I hope Vice Alliance leader Xiong can be magnanimous and give him a chance to repent. Vice Alliance leader Xiong snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. He seemed to be thinking about how to deal with Du Peng. The entire special envoy's flying ship was silent. Even the mountain wind was so scared that it didn't dare to blow. Only a corner of the flying ship was seen clearly by Xiaohua. He sneered in his heart. He already knew the reason why the 2 demons were putting on a show. Vice Alliance leader Xiong thought for a moment and said, My Liu Immortal Alliance has always been fair in rewards and punishments. Since you all worked for my Liu Immortal Alliance, the Alliance Master has seen it all. Since that's the case, I won't kill this guy on the spot. I'll let him make up for his mistakes. Many thanks, Vice Alliance leader Xiong. The 4 spirit severing stage envoys hurriedly kowtowed to express their gratitude. Du Peng also endured the pain and kowtowed. Du Peng, Vice Alliance leader Xiong said again. This time, my Liu Immortal Alliance sent out 5 envoys. The other 4 envoys each sent over 1,000 cultivators. Only you sent over 100 cultivators. It can be seen that you didn't put much effort into this matter. You should immediately send a letter to the Alliance Master and request for your subordinates to fill this gap. You should personally lead all the cultivators to the Lost Land. Ah! Du Peng's face was originally filled with joy. However, when he heard this, his face turned pale and he said in a panic, Vice Alliance leader Xiong, what? Vice Alliance leader Xiong's face revealed a sinister smile. Could it be that you want me to kill you on the spot? With that, Vice Alliance leader Xiong released his aura and enveloped Du Peng. The other 4 spirit severing stage cultivators hurriedly said, Vice Alliance leader Xiong, the Wuming Mountain range is too dangerous. All the cultivators above the nascent soul stage seem to have not passed through it. If Du Peng goes over, shut up. Vice Alliance leader Xiong scolded. Everyone knows that the Wuming Mountain range is dangerous. However, look at the thousands of cultivators below you. What are they doing standing here? They are risking their lives to pass through the Wuming Mountain range that you speak of. If they can go, why can't Du Peng go? Why can't his subordinates go? Could it be that they are the only ones who are brave and the Defeat You Immortal Alliance can only be cowards? The 4 spirit severing stage cultivators were speechless. If you go to the Wuming Mountain range, you still have a chance of survival. If you don't go, you will only die. Vice Alliance leader Xiong looked at Du Peng and said coldly, You choose for yourself. With that, Vice Alliance leader Xiong ignored Du Peng and looked at the special envoy's flying ship. His gaze swept across everyone as if he was looking at them. Everyone unconsciously shrank their necks as if they were extremely afraid. The Vice Alliance leader Xiong suddenly said in a thunderous voice, "You are the brave warriors of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. Since young, you have shouldered the heavy responsibility of the tens of millions of disciples of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. Now, you have also shouldered the heavy responsibility of the Heaven Alliance. Now that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has changed greatly." Vice Alliance leader Xiong's voice echoed between heaven and earth. The nascent soul cultivators on the Special Envoy's flying ship all looked awe-inspiring, as if they had really become the brave warriors who saved the world. As for Du Peng, he nodded at the four spirit severing stage cultivators somewhat sadly. His figure quietly flew down from the flying ship and hurriedly entered the cabin. The other Special Envoys looked at each other and looked at each other. They knew that Du Peng and Vice Alliance leader Xiong were not on good terms, but they definitely did not expect that Vice Alliance leader Xiong would hit him when he was down at this time. "If you make a mistake, you will be punished. Not to mention the Special Envoys of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. If I make a mistake, the Alliance leader will also punish me. But if you've rendered meritorious service, then you must be rewarded. Everyone, don't worry. Once all of you step foot into the Lost Grounds, not only will all of you have opened a new chapter in your cultivation, you'll even obtain generous rewards from my Defeat Immortal Alliance. I am a little envious of all of you. If I had not merged with my body, I would have gone to the Wuming Mountain range to try my luck." Ha! Hearing this, some of the spirit severing stage cultivators could not help but laugh, as if they felt that this boorish man was not what they thought in their hearts. Then, Vice Alliance leader Xiong said a few more words of encouragement and turned to ask the other four spirit severing stage cultivators, "Is everything ready?" A slightly taller cultivator hurriedly replied, "Everything is ready. Only Vice Alliance leader Xiong can come over. We are going to give out the number plates and prepare to leave. Leave number 1 to Du Peng." Vice Alliance leader Xiong glanced at the flying ship below him and ordered. "Yes, Disciple understands." Hearing this, the cultivator nodded and asked in a low voice, "However, Disciple does not know how many disciples Du Peng will bring to the Lost Land. How many people are there now?" Vice Alliance leader Xiong frowned and asked. "There are nearly 5,000 spirit severing stage cultivators selected. Including those prepared by the Immortal Alliance, there should be 30,000 people." The cultivator did not dare to delay and hurriedly replied, 50,000. Vice Alliance leader Xiong waved his hand and said, "Let Du Peng gather 50,000 cultivators." 50,000. The cultivator was slightly taken aback. Clearly, this number was beyond his expectations. He hurriedly said in a low voice, "Vice Alliance leader Xiong, 50,000 spirit severing stage cultivators has already surpassed us. Damn it, did I say 50,000 spirit severing stage cultivators?" Vice Alliance leader Xiong glared at him, scaring the cultivator into quickly nodding and saying, "Yes, yes, Disciple understands." While speaking, Du Peng flew out of the flying ship. The injury on his shoulder did not change at all. He bowed and said, reporting to Vice Alliance leader Xiong, "Disciple has already written a letter to Lord Alliance leader. Lord Alliance leader has agreed to Disciple's compensation." Vice Alliance leader Xiong nodded and ignored Du Peng. The cultivator beside him hurriedly told him about Vice Alliance leader Xiong's orders. Du Peng was stunned on the spot. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Disciple understands. Thank you Vice Alliance leader Xiong for thinking so highly of Disciple. It's good that you understand." Vice Alliance leader Xiong grinned and said, "I'll wait for the day you make up for your mistakes." Then, Vice Alliance leader Xiong rubbed his chin and said, "That's right, I'm afraid your 20,000 disciples are not on the flying ship, so you won't be able to give out tokens today. I'm not going to wait for this bullshit ceremony." The tall cultivator hurriedly replied, "Disciple is here." Vice Alliance leader Xiong raised his hand and said, "Give me token number 1. The cultivator named Jean Tu did not dare to delay. He hurriedly took out a palm-sized token from his storage ring. On it was the number 1. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 5016. Vice Alliance leader Xiong took the token and looked down at the flying ship. He raised his voice and said, "Everyone, I still have other important matters to attend to in the Immortal Alliance. I can't wait here for too long. Therefore, I can't watch all of you bring the token to the Wuming Mountain Range. Today, I will give this token to Du Peng. I hope he can atone for his mistakes and bring all of you to the Lost Land." As he spoke, Vice Alliance leader Xiong handed the token to Du Peng. Du Peng hurriedly bowed and received it. He replied, "I will not disappoint Alliance leader." Unfortunately, before Du Peng could finish speaking, Vice Alliance leader Xiong laughed loudly. The black eagle sitting cross-legged in the distance let out a long cry and flapped its wings. Vice Alliance leader Xiong's figure flashed and landed on the black eagle's back in the blink of an eye. His voice was like a thunderclap as he said, "I'm leaving. You can wait for me. Farewell, Vice Alliance leader Xiong." Everyone, including Du Peng, hurriedly bowed. After the Black Hawk left, the 4 spirit severing stage cultivators looked at each other and then sympathetically looked at Du Peng. The 4 of them wanted to say something, but when the words came to their mouths, they didn't know where to start. After all, the 4 envoys all had backgrounds. If they said something wrong, it would make Du Peng suspicious. Du Peng smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you for your pleas. If it wasn't for you, I am afraid I wouldn't even have this chance." Sigh. Jean too looked at the token in Du Peng's hand and sighed. "We thought that fellow Taoist Du's selection would be too few and Vice Alliance leader Xiong would reprimand us. After all, fellow Taoist Yuani has already reported this to Alliance leader, but..." As he spoke, Jean too glanced at another spirit severing stage cultivator. That spirit severing stage cultivator was obviously very close to Vice Alliance leader Xiong. Seeing Jean too looking at him, he hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Jean too, don't look at me. I admit that I have a good relationship with Vice Alliance leader Xiong, but I also have a good relationship with Du Peng." "Ah." Du Peng laughed and said, "This matter has nothing to do with you. I'm afraid it's something else." At this point, Du Peng seemed to want to say something but hesitated. Instead, he changed the topic and said, "This Du has already submitted a letter of apology to the Alliance Master. Today, the Alliance Master is very happy to see this Du redeem himself. He has already revealed to this Du that as long as this Du can return from the lost place alive, this Du will have other benefits." Jean too and the other soul formation cultivators revealed looks of envy. Jean too smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Du is indeed a lucky person. It's rare that you could survive such a dangerous situation. However, fellow Taoist, you should still be careful. The Wuming Mountain Range is not an easy place to deal with." That's right. Brother Du, you should think about how to pass through the Wuming Mountain Range." The rest of the people nodded in agreement. "Let's go. Today is a happy start for us. We're going to finish the task that Lord Alliance Master gave us. However, I didn't expect that because of this Du's matter, everyone would be delayed for a few days. This Du has already ordered the disciples to prepare a banquet. This Du will apologize to everyone during the banquet." Du Peng looked at everyone and squeezed out a smile on his face. At this moment, the wound on his shoulder hurt so much that his face couldn't help but twist. Seeing this, Jean too and the others said with concern, "Fellow Taoist Du, you should take some pills and meditate first. When Vice Alliance Master Xiong makes a move, how can it be simple?" Du Peng took out a jade bottle. As he swallowed the pills, he said, "Today, no one can leave. You must drink with this Du. Perhaps after today, this Du won't be able to see you again. Okay, we'll drink until we're drunk." Jean too and the others naturally understood the meaning of Du Peng's words. They looked at each other. Although they didn't feel the same way, they definitely felt the same way. Not to mention Du Peng and the others drinking and saying goodbye, Xiao Hua and the others had occupied the deck for half a day. After watching the farce, they returned to the meditation room. Seeing Ancestor Yu Ji looking over, Bai Fei hurriedly urged Xiao Hua, Zhuang Chen, and Beauty Yu to return. Even when Bai Fei activated the token to open and close the meditation room, he could hear the sound of clothes rustling behind him. It was obvious that Ancestor Yu Ji and the others had chased over. Damn it! Bai Fei stood in the meditation room. His expression was calm as he cursed in his heart. He himself wasn't sure whether this sentence was cursing Ancestor Yu Ji for courting death or cursing Beauty Yu for being with him and finding trouble for him. Fellow Taoist Bai. Beauty Yu's voice was a bit hoarse. She said, "This is my private matter. If you find it troublesome, then let me handle it myself. I won't bring any trouble to everyone." Bai Fei knew that when he saw Ancestor Yu Ji just now, he couldn't help but move a few steps away, which made Beauty Yu unhappy. He smiled and said, "Fairy is thinking too much." Previously, this Bai had a trace of fear in his heart and felt that he wanted to stay away from this matter. This Bai doesn't deny that this Bai is a bit afraid of this Ancestor Yu Ji. After all, this person's vicious reputation is too great. However, since this Bai and the other fellow Taoists have already discussed and agreed to join hands at this time, can this Bai still take half a step back? Good. Xiao Hua clapped and said, "Fellow Taoist Bai's words, I like to hear them. However, I still don't understand. We are all on the special envoy's flying ship right now. Doesn't that Ancestor Yu Ji know to avoid some taboos? Why does she still have to be so brazen? Just based on fellow Taoist Xiao's words, this Bai must become friends with fellow Taoist Xiao." Bai Fei smiled and said, "Because fellow Taoist Xiao has never done evil before." Sweat. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Didn't you say something about Ancestor Yu Ji? Why did fellow Taoist Bai mention I again? Do you know why Ancestor Yu Ji and the others don't avoid taboos?" Bai Fei said coldly, "Because they are originally lawless people, because they are originally deranged people, because they are originally extremely vicious people. In their eyes, there are only things they want to do. There are originally no rules, no fear. They are not the same as us and are not bound by Special Envoy Du's restrictions. Even in front of Special Envoy Du, they will restrain themselves for a moment. However, as long as they leave Special Envoy Du's line of sight, they will definitely do it again. They are also the outlaws of the secular world." Xiao Hua indifferently replied. "And that's right, outlaws. They don't care about their own lives, and also don't care about the lives of others." Bai Fei nodded and said, "These people can only be killed." Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said, "But who dares to kill them?" Bai Fei sneered and said, "They have illustrious family backgrounds, powerful seniors, and they themselves have cultivation that the majority of cultivators don't have. Even if it is Special Envoy Du, do you think that at this time he will make a move to kill Ancestor Yu Ji? Probably not." Zhuang Chen hesitated and replied in a low voice. "So?" Bai Fei nodded and said, "We have to save ourselves. How do we save ourselves?" Xiao Hua asked with interest. "Their cultivation is higher than ours, and they have more people than us. This is the most troublesome part." Bai Fei frowned and thought for a long time before discussing with Xiao Hua and the others. Xiao Hua listened for a few words, and it was nothing more than a scheme to lead a wolf into the house, so he lost interest. At this time, there was movement in his space. Taoist Witch and Huang Tong had quietly returned. So Xiao Hua responded without a word, and his mind entered the space. After turning into Jade Archive Xiao Hua, he bowed to Taoist Witch and Huang Tong and asked, "Two fellow cultivators, this trip is considered smooth?" "Ha!" Huang Tong laughed and said, "Yang Xia has seen our strength in the Tianfeng Forbidden Land. How would he dare to have any other ideas? When he saw that we had the 9 transformation golden pill and the jade slip of 3 mysteries, he was overjoyed and thanked us endlessly." "That's strange." Jade Archive Xiao Hua pinched his chin and frowned. According to the previous 2 times, the Tao Master and the Tao Master acted, the Tao Master should have appeared by now. But why haven't we seen the Tao Master? "Fellow cultivator, you think too much?" Taoist Wu said angrily. Previously, Taoist friend failed to modify the nascent soul and essence soul cultivation methods. That was why Tao Ancestor and Tao Master appeared to bestow you the Tao Seed. Now that you have modified the 9 Revolutions Golden Core cultivation method, why did Tao Master appear? Jade Archive Xiaohua laughed. So it's not good for us to do too much. I don't think so. Huang Tong shook her head and said, I think that either the Tao Master will appear before we enter the Wuming Mountain range, or he will never appear. What do you mean? Jade Archive Xiaohua asked with interest. It's very simple. Huang Tong explained, the Yilin continent was abandoned by the Xian Alliance, so the choice of the Xian Alliance is naturally the choice of the Tao Master. Why would the Tao Master appear in the Yilin continent without the Tao Master's orthodoxy? Yes, you're right. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded and said, I think so too. We have never seen any traces of the Tao Master and the Tao Master in the Xiaoyu continent, the hidden immortal continent, the Western Paradise and the Thousand Demons sacred realm. We can only see the 2 ancestors in the Yilin continent where the Tao sect thrives, because the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance are here. Perhaps when the Xian Alliance develops again in the future, the Tao Master will take care of the Yilin continent. We've already done it, who cares if he comes or not? Taoist which said angrily again, if the Tao Master doesn't come, fellow cultivator won't modify the cultivation method? Also, do you think the Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance will let the Xian Alliance rebuild so easily? Seeing that Taoist which was in a bad mood, Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't say much and nodded. Fellow cultivator, you're right. Of course, the Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance said it well, but who knows what they will do in the future? The 2 immortal alliances can't even work together, let alone the Xian Alliance that has already declined. Our goal is to modify the cultivation method, not to get any rewards. If the Tao Master really comes now, we'll be in a difficult situation. New Tao Seed. I don't know which fellow cultivator will be able to obtain it. It's better if he doesn't come. Of course. Huang Tong smiled and said, we didn't make this trip in vain. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward. Chapter 5017. While speaking, Huang Tong took out 3 things from his arms and handed them to Xiaohua. These are the things that Xian Alliance left behind in the Yilin continent when they went to the 10,000 demon realm. Yang Xia entrusted I to bring them to you. Sweat. Jade Archive Xiaohua did not even look at the 3 things and smiled bitterly. Fellow Huang Tong, even fellow Wu saw through Yang Xia's plan. Why do you still want to accept these 3 things? Needless to say, these 3 things must be very important to the Xian Alliance. The leader of the Xian Alliance did not dare to bring them into the 10,000 demon realm, so he left them in the Yilin continent. Yang Xia asked me to accept these things because he wanted to hand over the matter of rebuilding the Xian Alliance to us. Huang Tong shrugged and smiled. Of course I know. But the problem is, we don't have the time and opportunity to rebuild the Xian Alliance for him. He didn't say it clearly. Looking at this shameless old fox, Jade Archive Xiaohua was also helpless. He raised his hand and grabbed, then let I see what these things are. The 3 things fell into Jade Archive Xiaohua's hands, and Jade Archive Xiaohua's body shook. The first thing he saw was a broken array diagram. As soon as this array diagram fell into Jade Archive Xiaohua's hands, a murderous aura rushed towards him. Layers of stormy waves of sword chi rotated crazily in this array diagram, condensing into a fierce sword array that wanted to get out of the sword diagram. And as soon as the murderous aura touched Jade Archive Xiaohua's hands, king, there was an earth-shattering sound of a sword. Jade Archive Xiaohua's body could not help but turn into a sword. A sharp aura that could pierce heaven and earth was born from Jade Archive Xiaohua's body, tearing the surrounding space apart. Damn it. Huang Tong was also stunned. Why didn't I have such power when I was holding this thing? Because you are not strong enough to control this immortal trapping sword diagram. Jade Archive Xiaohua's voice was like the sound of a sword, resounding in the sky. The sound of the sword was so ear-piercing that even the broken immortal executioner stage trembled slightly, as if it was afraid of the sword intent of the immortal trapping sword diagram. No way. Taoist Wu was also dumbfounded. He looked at the immortal slaying platform and then at the sword diagram that had transformed into a clear sword light. Within the sword light, there was a faintly discernible ferocious sword. Although it had yet to reveal its sword form, the incomparable coldness within the sword light made Taoist Wu's heart shrink. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Is Yang Xia stupid? He actually gave such a supreme sword diagram to you?" "It's simple." Jade Archive Xiao Hua's sword-like figure slowly shrank and descended as he replied faintly, "Firstly, he doesn't know that this is the immortal trapping sword diagram. Secondly, even if he knew, the laws of heaven and earth of the Yi-Lin continent would have restricted this immortal trapping sword diagram. Without immortal spiritual sword chi, I'm afraid that he wouldn't even be able to see through this sword diagram. Thirdly, this is not the complete sword diagram. This sword diagram in the Xian alliance of the Yi-Lin continent is only a representation, a symbol." Jade Archive Xiao Hua transformed into his human form and raised his hand to point at the clear sword chi. Clang! A surge of sword chi flew out from the sword chi and completely cut off Jade Archive Xiao Hua's hand. In this space, the sword diagram still had such power. This was even more out of Huang Tong and the rest's expectations. Jade Archive Xiao Hua wasn't surprised. He raised his hand again and grabbed. Rumble! Countless space-profound laws were born around the sword chi and rolled towards the sword chi. The sword chi once again transformed into countless sword lights, wanting to kill the profound laws. However, as Jade Archive Xiao Hua closed his hand, all the sword lights disappeared and the broken sword diagram appeared in front of everyone again. "This is an item from the immortal realm." Huang Tong's gaze was like lightning. She had already seen the supreme sword form standing proudly in the sword diagram. It wasn't something that could be created by the laws of heaven and earth of the Yi-Lin continent. She couldn't help but remind him in a low voice. Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded. "So I am considering how to deal with this sword diagram. Since it's called the immortal trapping sword diagram, then there should be some immortal trapping sword, right?" Taoist Wu asked. Jade Archive Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "I don't know about this. I only know that this is the immortal trapping sword diagram from the sword diagram. It's a part of a big array diagram." "There's an even bigger sword diagram?" Huang Tong was a little dumbfounded. Then what kind of power would it have?" "Slaying immortals." Jade Archive Xiao Hua replied indifferently, "Slaying immortals. As for what immortals it is, it depends on who is controlling the sword diagram." Hearing this, Huang Tong's eyes lit up and said, "Then what are you still thinking about? Of course, you have to take it to the immortal realm. An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin." Jade Archive Xiao Hua sighed. He waved his hand and imprisoned the immortal trapping sword diagram. His gaze landed on the second item. The second item was a broken stone tablet. There were a few strokes engraved on the stone tablet, which seemed to be a part of a word. However, from these strokes, even Xiao Hua, who was in the Jade Archive, couldn't tell what the word was. As for the stone tablet, it seemed to have an indescribable suction force that attracted Jade Archive Xiao Hua's gaze. However, when Jade Archive Xiao Hua's gaze fell on it, he could only see a misty brilliance. It was a piece of heaven and earth. However, Jade Archive Xiao Hua couldn't tell what was inside. Either there was nothing inside the stone tablet, or the stone tablet had a restriction that surpassed Jade Archive Xiao Hua's strength. Jade Archive Xiao Hua couldn't see it. However, Jade Archive Xiao Hua faintly smelled an indescribable aura from the stone tablet. This aura seemed to be a great opportunity, but also a great danger. What's the origin of this thing? Huang Tong saw that Jade Archive Xiao Hua didn't speak and couldn't help but ask. Jade Archive Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. "I can't tell." "What? Even you can't tell?" Huang Tong was surprised again. "In this world, there's something that you can't control?" "Yes." Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded. "This stone tablet and the sword diagram just now are not from the Yi-Lin continent. They should be the Xian Alliance's treasures. Xian Alliance has such good things. What about the Dao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance?" It had to be said that Huang Tong sometimes overthought things. I don't even know how to deal with these two troublesome things. Why do you care about other people's treasures? Jade Archive Xiao Hua said unhappily. Huang Tong snorted coldly. Once you enter the Xiao sect, you are as deep as the ocean. From now on, Shen Alliance is just a passerby. In your hands, how can you let others take advantage of it? Even if I can't use it, I will carve the word, Xiao, and place it here. After speaking, Huang Tong looked at the third item and asked, what about this? This? Jade Archive Xiao Hua looked at the last fist-sized golden core in his hand. This golden core was engraved with a mysterious heavenly pattern and earth deed. Under the illumination of the spiritual light in the space, this heavenly pattern and earth deed gave off a beautiful luster. A cultivator seemed to be sitting cross-legged in this luster. Thus, Xiao Hua smiled and said, this is a Xian Alliance cultivator's golden core 8 transformations. If you have the Xian Alliance's secret technique, it can allow a golden core 9 transformations cultivator to cultivate to the equivalent of a golden core 8 transformations cultivator. Now that the Xian Alliance has lost this secret technique, this golden core, I'm afraid it's Yang Xia's test. However, I don't know this secret technique. I'll have to disappoint Yang Xia. As he spoke, Jade Archive Xiao Hua imprisoned the broken stone tablet and gold core, placing them together with the immortal trapping sword diagram. Turning his head to look outside the space, he smiled and said, Bai Fei and the rest should have finished their discussion. This poor Taoist will go out with them to kill Ancestor Yu Ji. How embarrassing! You still want to kill a nascent soul kid? Huang Tong waved his hand and said, if anyone asks, don't say that this old man knows you. Jade Archive Xiao Hua smiled and left the space. His mind returned to its original position. Unfortunately, Bai Fei and the others were still thinking too much. 3 days later, Bai Fei and the others received the token from the Defeat You Immortal Alliance's disciple. When they saw their own numbers, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Taoist Master Xiao. Bai Fei saw that his own token had 2,373 written on it and couldn't help but be startled. He hurriedly looked at Xiao Hua and asked, what's written on your token? Xiao Hua raised the token and said with a frown, I's token is 2,373 too. Hiss. Bai Fei sucked in a breath of cold air and said in surprise, I understand. Xiao Hua had already understood when he received the token. At this moment he pretended to be puzzled and looked at Beauty Yu, asking, Fairy, what's written on your token? I'm 8,666. After Beauty Yu finished speaking, Zhuang Chen beside her smiled bitterly and said, I'm 7664. Damn it, we discussed for 3 days for nothing. Bai Fei cursed in a low voice and said, I neglected this matter. Since Li Yu Immortal Alliance has 5 special envoys for 5 rounds of selection, how could they all be looking for the Wind Underworld Wheel? The other 4 groups of cultivators are naturally looking for other types of soul tools. Our Wind Underworld Wheel and those soul tools should have a better effect when used together. Therefore, it's impossible for us to be grouped together. But there are only about 40 people who got the Wind Underworld Wheel. Zhuang Chen was still puzzled and asked, how many cultivators can they team up with? Xiao Hua looked at this devil who was pretending to be stupid and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, have you forgotten? The maze formation in the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Land was discovered by the special envoys. If Li Yu Immortal Alliance wants to send disciples there, why would they let their disciples participate in the selection? When we return to the special envoy's flying ship, the special envoys can order some disciples to take the Wind Underworld Wheel away. When Bai Fei heard this, his expression changed slightly. He seemed to have neglected this matter and said in a low voice, But that maze formation has already collapsed. Nascent soul cultivators like us naturally can't enter. Xiao Hua said with a smile, could it be that spirit-severing cultivators can't enter too? What about void refinement cultivators? Could it be that Li Yu Immortal Alliance only has nascent soul cultivators? Sigh. Bai Fei sighed and looked at the cultivators on the flying ship who had already received their tokens and were checking their tokens. Du Peng and the other 4 spirit-severing cultivators were wearing tight robes and were standing in the air talking about something. Bai Fei couldn't help but secretly worry about whether his scheme would work or not. At this moment, the disciples of Liu Immortal Alliance who were also wearing tight robes flew out from the deck. These disciples were holding tokens in their hands, and the numbers on the tokens were emitting a kind of hazy luster that could be seen clearly from far away. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 50:18. After waiting for these disciples to stand in different places outside the flying boat, a voice once again sounded from high up in the sky. Everyone, this time, there are a total of 50,000 nascent soul and gold core cultivators heading towards the Lost Land. In order to safely pass through the Wuming Mountain range, we will be divided into 5,000 groups of 10. In other words, from 1 to 10 will be a group, and from 11 to 20 will be a group. In each group, 1 and 11 will be the head of the group. The rest of the groups will be so. Everyone, quickly find your own group and find the head of the group to register. Since Xiao Hua's number plate was 27833, he was naturally in the 2783rd group. He looked all around, and with some difficulty he found the disciple of the defeated Immortal Union who held the 27,831 command plate. It was not that this disciple was hard to find, but because following the voice's command, several thousand cultivators flew up at the same time. The entire scene was quite chaotic, and Xiao Hua's line of sight was blocked. Xiao Hua found it difficult to find his own group, let alone the other cultivators. Several thousand cultivators were like several thousand blindly flying flies, and only after a long while did they gradually become orderly. Xiao Hua had just flown to the front of his own group when he saw a nascent soul cultivator holding a command plate flying over at a moderate pace. When that nascent soul cultivator saw Xiao Hua, he immediately laughed and said, "Ha, so it's you. If she was here, it would be wonderful." Xiao Hua's gaze indifferently swept over, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. Wasn't this nascent soul cultivator the Jade Fat Ancestor from before? At this moment, the command plate in Jade Fat Ancestor's hand was quite eye-catching. Your Jade Fat Ancestor?" Behind Xiao Hua, a slightly surprised voice sounded. Another nascent soul cultivator slowly flew over, one step slower than Jade Fat Ancestor. "Damn it, Poison Stone Master, why am I in the same group as you?" Jade Fat Ancestor looked at the command plate in this nascent soul cultivator's hand and unconsciously spat, cursing, "I'm really unlucky. I'm the unlucky one. Poison Stone Master cursed, I'm actually in the same group as you, this thing that's neither male nor female." "Ha, which thing that's neither male nor female? Tell me your name, I like it." Before Poison Stone could finish speaking, another sharp voice rang out. A beautiful female cultivator with long black hair flew over. Her clothes were red and green, making her look particularly gorgeous. Cough, cough. When Jade Fat Ancestor saw this person, she immediately coughed twice. She actually had a disgusted look on her face. However, she didn't dare to show her disgust too clearly. Instead, she looked left and right and said in a low voice, "Poison Stone Guru, who was speaking just now?" "Of course it's me." The female cultivator who had just called herself lousy changed her tune and said in a sweet voice, "What? You actually didn't hurry over to greet me when you saw me coming?" Shiqing. Old Ancestor Yuji flew into a rage and shouted, "Which family's great aunt are you? You better explain clearly. Otherwise, even if this daddy doesn't have to go to the Lost Lands, I'll still explain clearly to you." "Ioyo." The nascent soul cultivator named Shiqing curled her lips and said, "Your ancestor even watched the moon with me on the mountain peak. If you don't call me lousy great aunt, then what should you call me?" Cough, cough. While everyone was talking, a cultivator with a body as tall as an iron tower flew over. He coughed twice and swept his gaze across everyone. He said in a simple voice, "Are you all in the same group as me? Huang Chu Fan? Huang Dorgad?" Not to mention Ancestor Yu Ji being greatly shocked, even the last nascent soul cultivator named Shiqing was greatly shocked. In disbelief, he cried out, "Why did you also come?" Since you all are here, why can't this daddy come? Huang Chufan, who was called Door God, smiled coldly. As he spoke, he flew to the disciple holding the number 27831 and asked, "Am I in the same group as you?" That disciple looked at the number 27,833 in Huang Chufan's hand and said with a smile, "That's right, Senior Huang. You are in the same group as this junior. Junior's name is Shui Chong. Greetings, Senior." Xiao Hua stood to the side and watched. When he heard the nascent soul middle stage cultivator named Shui Chong call Huang Chufan, who was also a nascent soul middle stage cultivator, Senior, he couldn't help but be surprised. In his heart, he said, "Looks like this Huang Door God has some background." Xiao Hua's thoughts were correct. This Huang Chufan naturally had some background. With him standing there, Jade Fat Ancestor, Venomous Master, and Shi Qing didn't dare to say anything. Damn it. Back in the sky, Du Peng saw the chaos and cursed, "This Du has been busy dispatching disciples these past few days and forgot about these cultivators. Such a mess. I'm afraid that before they even left the Changchang Plains, they would have been discovered by soul cultivators, right?" "Brother Du doesn't need to worry," Jean Tu said with a smile. "There are only a few cultivators. When your tens of thousands of disciples come, just bring these cultivators away." Du Peng's eyes flashed with coldness. He said coldly, "Most of these nascent soul cultivators are arrogant and unruly. This Du has a portion of Jindan cultivators among this Du's disciples. I'm afraid they won't be able to suppress them." "Then kill the chicken to scare the monkey," another spirit-severing cultivator suggested without hesitation. While they were speaking, thousands of disciples were already in position. They all stood orderly in the sky, quietly waiting for orders. "Listen to my orders." Du Peng's figure flew out from the group of four. He waved his hand and said, "Disciples, return to your positions." Yes. Not far from the special envoy's flying ship, there was another flying ship of similar size. Following Du Peng's order, there was a chorus of agreement. Groups of nascent soul and Jindan cultivators flew out and supplemented the group of 5,000 that Xiao Hua and the others were in. Among them, 4 cultivators wearing blue robes flew to Shui Chong. The 4 of them cupped their hands towards Xiao Hua and the others. The nascent soul cultivator at the front first said, "I am Sect Chi Feng. Greetings, fellow Taoists." The other 3 were Jindan cultivators. The 3 of them bowed and said, "Juniors Hui Jin, Dian Hongji, and Su Pei greet seniors." Shui Chong didn't say much. Instead, he looked towards Huang Chufan. Huang Chufan nodded and said, "En." Since Huang Chufan was like this, Ancestor Yu Ji, Venomous Stone, and Shi Qing were even more indifferent. They swept their gazes and didn't speak. Xiao Hua sighed and waved his hand, saying, "Rise." His tone wasn't without loneliness. Because Xiao Hua already saw that these 4 cultivators, along with Shui Chong who was the first to stand in front, were all cultivators that had been possessed by the devil race. There wasn't a single normal human. It was to the extent that the defeated Immortal Alliance near Xiaohua were also cultivators possessed by the devil race. The entire area near the special envoy's flying ship was really a group of devils dancing in disorder. Different from Xiaohua's loneliness, Bai Fei was somewhat anxious. His situation was similar to Xiaohua's. After finding 2, 3, 7, and 1 nascent soul cultivators, he couldn't help but sweep his gaze around. Even when several groups of nascent soul cultivators came over, he didn't have the mind to say more than a few words. He was far from his previous shrewdness. "Master?" Xiaoya seemed to have sensed something and hurriedly transmitted her voice. "Be careful, these nascent soul cultivators have ill intentions towards you. It seems like one of them is familiar with Ancestor Yu Ji." Bai Fei composed himself and didn't look at those nascent soul cultivators. He sneered in his heart, "These damn things, even if I can't pass through Wuming Mountain Range, I'll take them down with me. I absolutely can't let them reach Dawn Rain Continent." While Bai Fei was speaking, a nascent soul cultivator flew over with 4 gold core cultivators. Bai Fei's eyes lit up. Wasn't the last gold core cultivator he was looking forward to Yi Yun? Bai Fei opened his mouth and was about to call out when Yi Yun hurriedly shook her head slightly, hinting Bai Fei not to recognize her. When Bai Fei saw Yi Yun's expression, his heart was completely at ease. He faintly smiled to show that he understood. Then, he leisurely looked around as if he was calculating something. The nascent soul cultivator who brought Yi Yun and the others over wore a purple gold crown and looked very strange. He flew to Bai Fei's side and looked at the group leader. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Lu, disciple Hu Yi has come under the special envoy's orders to bring 4 disciples here to await your orders. Disciple Zhang Qin, Yu Yanli, He Zhuo, and Yi Yun greets the seniors." The 4 gold core disciples didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed to the group of nascent soul cultivators. Without waiting for Senior Marshal Brother Lu to speak, a nascent soul cultivator at the side licked his lips and laughed softly. "I didn't expect to be in the same group as the female cultivators. This old man's luck is really good." Senior Brother Lu frowned. Just as he was about to speak, a commotion broke out not far away. A tall monk with more than 10 skulls around his neck shouted, "What capabilities do you have to be the leader of my group? How can the 10 of us pass through Wuming Mountain Range with you leading us? Hurry up and hand over the token." "Senior." A cultivator with a soft but determined voice replied, "This junior is under the special envoy's orders to lead the seniors through Wuming Mountain Range. Although this junior's strength is not as strong as yours, this junior has trained with all of you for several years before coming to Changchang Plains. As the group leader, this junior doesn't have any authority. Instead, this junior is responsible for coordinating the actions of the 5,000 groups with all of you. Instead, this junior is under the orders of the special envoy. This junior is far superior to this junior in this aspect." "Who said so?" The monk shouted. "This senior can command 10 people with this token." "This senior said so." Du Peng had already looked around and was waiting for someone to come forward to show his authority. He also understood that there would definitely be someone among these cultivators who would come out. As soon as Du Peng saw the monk open his mouth, he immediately flew over and said coldly, "What's wrong? You're not convinced? Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip." Chapter 5019. Lord Special Envoy. That disciple didn't expect that his words would really provoke Du Peng. Although he was arrogant and unruly, he wasn't a fool. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Junior was just joking with this disciple. How could Du Peng allow him to say more?" "Woo." He raised his hand, and his palm immediately expanded to several hundred feet in size. Then he grabbed at the monk. The monk panicked and shouted, "Senior Du, this is a misunderstanding." At the same time, he moved his body in an attempt to escape. However, seeing that the space around him was sealed and he couldn't teleport, even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, the monk gritted his teeth and shouted, "Du Peng, you actually..." Unfortunately, before the monk could finish speaking, Du Peng forcefully activated his dermic powers. The giant hand tore through the void and grabbed the monk's body. Du Peng's voice was like a thunderclap as he said, "Since you took the command token of my Defeat Immortal Alliance, then you have to listen to the orders of the disciples of my Defeat Immortal Alliance. If anyone dares to refuse, then they'll suffer the same fate as this kid." Boom. Along with Du Peng's voice, a brilliant light flashed above the hand. With a muffled sound, the monk's body was crushed into a pulp. Chirp chirp. A fat nascent soul was forcibly squeezed out from the gap of the large hand, its face full of panic. Poof! A green light flashed from Du Peng's nose. Before anyone could see what kind of magic treasure was inside the green light, the nascent soul's head had already been pierced through. The nascent soul's small eyes closed and it collapsed in Du Peng's hand. Du Pengyu looked around and his gaze landed on a nascent soul cultivator. He smiled. "Is that Patriarch Shirshin?" Yes, I am." Shivering with fear, old ancestor Shur-Exen hurriedly bowed and replied, "I heard you have a banner for refining nascent souls?" Du Peng asked with a smile. Forefather Shur-Exen turned pale with fright and hurriedly dropped to his knees. "This junior knows his mistake. This junior knows his mistake?" Humph, useless thing. Du Peng shook his hand and threw the nascent soul to Patriarch Shirshin. Then he scolded, "What are you afraid of? It's a bargain for you." Ah? Patriarch Heart-Devouring was stunned. After a while, he said ecstatically, "Thank you, Senior. Thank you." As he spoke, he quickly opened his mouth and a black flag covered in blood light flew out. The moment the flag opened, countless miserable screams came from within. When the flag opened, the monk's nascent soul was sucked into it. Then, Patriarch Shur-Exen opened his mouth and the flag flew into his mouth once more. Du Peng threw his nascent soul away and flew into the sky. His eyes were like lightning as he released his pressure. After looking around, he raised his token and said, "Although I'm a spirit-severing cultivator, I'll still take token number 1 and go with you to the Wu Meng mountain range. Your group leaders are this old man's doppelganger. They can hear this old man's orders, and their actions can also be reported back to this old man through the token. Whoever dares to disobey my orders and try to play tricks in the teleportation tunnel. If they don't want me to reach the Lost Land alive, I'll make sure they die before I do." "Yes, we understand. We'll follow Lord Envoy's orders." The group of nascent soul cultivators trembled in fear, while the disciples of Liu Immortal Alliance answered loudly. Xiao Hua saw this farce and his face was as calm as water. Similar to Xiao Hua, Bai Fei also stayed out of the matter. When he saw Du Peng raise his hand to grab the big monk, everyone looked up at the sky. His figure moved slightly and floated to Yi Yun's side. He raised his hand and handed a storage ring to Yun from his Taoist robe. Yi Yun was shocked. She didn't know why Bai Fei did this, but her expression changed slightly. She didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly took the storage ring. Her trembling and sweaty little hand even touched Bai Fei's finger. Bai Fei handed over the storage ring and looked up at the sky with the same expression. Du Peng killed the monk's nascent soul. Bai Fei transmitted his voice. "This is the medicinal pill I've found for you all these years. I was in a hurry that day and didn't have time to give it to you. Now that we're about to enter the Wuming mountain range, I'm afraid you'll be in danger in the teleportation tunnel because your injuries haven't healed yet. So I'm taking the risk to give it to you. Quickly find a time to take it." Yi Yun was a little angry at Bai Fei for taking such a risk, but when she heard that he was asking for medicinal pills for her injuries and even took the risk to give it to her, she felt sweet in her heart. She smiled sweetly at Bai Fei and nodded slightly, indicating that she understood. Hee. Xiao Yu's voice sounded in Bai Fei's ears again. "Master, your bewitchment technique has reached the point of perfection. This medicinal pill contains the Void Cloud pill, right?" Bai Fei frowned, showing a displeased expression. "Master, don't worry." Xiao Yu seemed to have noticed Bai Fei's displeasure and hurriedly explained. "What I mean is that Master hasn't refined the Void Cloud pill to perfection yet. If you give it to this little girl now, I'm afraid she won't be able to force out all of her absolute evil dark yin. It won't be as effective for Master's cultivation as expected." "You talk too much." Bai Fei scolded in his heart and didn't say anything else. Bai Fei naturally knew that the Void Cloud pill wasn't refined to perfection, but the Wuming mountain range was full of dangers. He and Yi Yun could die at any time, so he wanted to seize any opportunity to improve his strength. After Du Peng showed his power, he didn't say anything else. He raised his hand and pointed to the east, where the sky was still gray and gloomy under the bright sun, and said, "Everyone make a blood oath." The disciples of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance who held the number 1 token answered in unison. They opened their mouths and spat out thousands of drops of blood essence. As the disciples cast spells, blood scars like blood shadows appeared in midair. Ooh! As these blood scars appeared, the heaven and earth vaguely emitted ghostly wails and wolf howls. Wisps of indescribable dark green mixed with black threads rushed out of the void and shrouded the space of nearly 1,000 miles. For a moment, even the scorching sun in the sky gave birth to a chilling cold. Soul technique? Demon blood shadow? Xiao Hua frowned and suddenly understood something. This wasn't out of his expectations. After all, the Defeat You Immortal Alliance was close to the Wuming mountain range. Moreover, If the Alliance Master of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance coveted the Dawn Rain continent and wanted to pass through the Wuming Mountain range, he would definitely cultivate his disciples to cultivate soul techniques. But what Xiaohua didn't expect was that these demons who possessed the bodies of humans could also use soul techniques. Moreover, they mixed their soul techniques with the demon blood shadows. Several thousand blood shadows flew out and rushed into the sky. Du Peng's figure followed and rushed into the sky. He looked at the other 4 doppelganger envoys and said with a smile, "Everyone, it's time to ask the Alliance Master's blood talisman." Okay. When the 4 doppelganger envoys heard this, they didn't dare to be negligent. They also flew into the sky and stood in a pentagon with Du Peng. Then each of them raised their hands and took out a fist-sized, blood-colored object from their bosoms. These objects were like amber, and their edges were sparkling and translucent. Inside each of them was a bloody scar the length of a finger. These bloody scars were extremely thick, and there were tens of thousands of fine lines. They looked like a blood-red eye that was looking at the thousands of bloody scars in the sky. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed in a low voice when he saw the power of the blood vessels in the blood-colored object. I'm afraid this Lian Feng isn't an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. He's a soul warrior or even a shaman. Maybe he wasn't kept in the dark. Instead, he colluded with the demon race. The demon race's target is the Dawn Rain continent while his target is the Wuming Mountain range. Xiaohua came to a realization. Together with Du Peng, the other 5 doppelganger envoys urged their blood essence and chanted different incantations from their mouths. As the incantations fell into the blood essence, the 5 blood essences turned into 5 different blood spheres. These blood spheres seemed to be boiling and surging. In the end, they condensed into different shapes. Some were triangular, some were square. Go! Du Peng and the others' complexions seemed to be somewhat pale. In the end, they pointed at the blood sphere and lifted it as if it was heavy. With a shout, the blood sphere fell into the blood talisman. Boom! As soon as the blood talisman came into contact with the blood sphere, it immediately shattered and turned into a baleful aura that soared into the sky. A valiant power of the blood vessels swept away nearly 5,000 bloody streaks in the sky like a big hand. Woof! Like the sound of green seal scripts, the baleful aura gave birth to all kinds of strange illusions. White bones, blood rivers, the netherworld, flowers, and so on flashed high in the sky like light and shadow. When all these strange phenomena disappeared, a talisman full of blood-colored seal scripts engraved with green seal scripts slowly floated down from the sky. Every time this talisman floated down an inch, a blood-colored mark would rush into the void and disappear. Du Peng then took out a bone case from his bosom. He didn't dare to fly high and only respectfully flew down to the blood talisman. When the blood talisman quietly fell into the bone case, he closed the bone case. His expression relaxed and he put the bone case away into his bosom. He bowed to the other 4 doppelganger envoys and said, "Thank you for your trouble." "We're nothing." Jean Tu and the others faintly smiled. "We don't dare to take credit for working for the Alliance head. On the contrary, Brother Du has to work hard for this trip. Hee, please help me pass on a message to the Alliance head." Du Peng looked at the Wuming Mountain range in the distance and said word by word, "Succeed or die trying." But Jean Tu and the others cupped their fists and said, "We'll definitely pass on your message to the Alliance head. Please." Du Peng's face seemed to be filled with emotion as he raised his hand and said, "Brother Du, please." Jean Tu and the others said with a solemn face, "We'll send Brother Du off." But Du Peng nodded and took out the number 1 token. He opened his mouth and said, "Everyone." Instantly, the 4,999 tokens produced the same voice at the same time. At this time, the disciples of the defeated Immortal Alliance didn't speak in unison. Instead, they spoke in the same way as they usually did. These voices also came from the tokens in Du Peng's hand. "Let's go." With Du Peng's order, 10 groups flew out. The other cultivators of the 10 groups didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly followed in an orderly manner. They flew towards the east at a low altitude. Not waiting for these 100 people to fly more than 300 meters away, another 100 people flew out. Xiaohua's group was the seventh group to fly out. Xiaohua, like the other cultivators, placed the command medallion in front of his chest. From the command medallion, he heard the disciple named Shuaichong call out in a low voice, "Seniors, we're setting off. Please follow this poor Taoist to fly this way. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 50-20. When Xiaohua heard this, he didn't hesitate in the slightest and flew along with Shuaichong towards the northeast for nearly 3 kilometers. Then, he followed the other cultivators and flew towards the east in a formation. When all the nascent soul and golden core cultivators had left, Du Peng took a deep breath and bowed to Jin Tu and the others again. "Farewell. I wish Brother Du success." Jin Tu and the others did not say much and bowed to see him off. When Du Peng turned into a light shadow and flew in front of all the cultivators, Jin Tu and the others looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. They knew that Du Peng's trip boded ill rather than well, and it would be extremely difficult for him to return. "Let's go, everyone." Jin Tu looked at the special envoy's flying boat and said, "Today's matter is over. The next time Alliance Master wants to think about the lost place, I'm afraid it will be 1,000 years later. 1,000 years later." Another Funshan cultivator looked up at the scorching sun and whispered, "By then, I'm afraid I'll have turned into a skeleton." As he spoke, he turned to look at Du Peng's back and said, "Du Peng's trip this time may seem like a one-way trip, but who knows if it's a blessing in disguise. Sometimes, I have the urge to rush into the Wumeng mountain range to see what's in the lost place and whether I can find a way to stop the loss of my lifespan. It's useless to think so much." Jin Tu shook his head. "We've just activated our blood essence and sped up the loss of our lifespan. Now, let's take the flying boat back. Don't use any spells." Then, everyone said a few more words and landed on a flying boat together. The low-level disciples drove the boat and flew into the distance. Not long after, the world returned to peace. No one knew that 50,000 cultivators were valiantly heading towards the Wumeng mountain range and pointing their swords at the Dawn Rain continent. 50,000 cultivators seemed to be a lot, but in the Changchang Plains, it was nothing. Not to mention, this was a place for soul cultivators. All the mountains, trees, rocks, and rivers were slightly different from other places in the Yilin continent. Just like the 10,000 demons realm and the 1,000 demons sacred realm, everything was much bigger. A group of 50,000 cultivators flying low in the sky was really inconspicuous. Taoist Wu and Huang Tong had already been to the Changchang Plains and did not find any special traces. Therefore, Xiaohua did not pay much attention to it. He followed the other cultivators and flew at a low altitude. He observed the scenery along the way and waited to see what Du Peng and the others were up to. Since Wuming Mountain Range was one with millions of Meng mountains, this Changli Plain was also the border of soul cultivators. It was similar to the Bai and Stockade where Xiaohua, Li Zongbao, and the others went on a journey. The climate there was extremely hot, and there were many mountain ranges. On top of that, there were many rocks, not to mention green grass. Most of them were scratching the ground. Sticking close to the ground, there were things that looked like thorns. These things had some thorns, but they also had some green leaves. There were even some fruits that were smaller than gravel among the green leaves. Furthermore, there weren't any large trees on the mountain range. Occasionally, there would be some slightly tall trees. They were no taller than 1 foot, but the trunks were extremely thick. There were also many branches on the trunks. However, these branches and tendrils were somewhat dry, and they were faintly dyed with a yellowish color. Seeing so many scenes that were similar to millions of Meng mountains, Xiaohua suddenly realized something. He hurriedly shouted in his heart, "Fellow cultivators, because of the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, millions of Meng mountains was barren. How many natives starved to death? How could I forget about this when I arrived at Wuming Mountain Range today?" Lightning Immortal smiled bitterly. "Fellow cultivator, we were not idle. When we broke into the realm from the 10,000 demon realm, we were already unconscious and you lost all your magic power. Then, you were schemed against by the devil race and fell directly into the heaven sacrificial abyss. You benefited from the disaster and obtained the Tao seed. Then we began to wake up. After that, we rushed to recover, but we had no time to save the world. Fellow cultivator Lightning is right. Taoist Wu also said, I didn't have much free time. Although it took me several years to come here from the Tianfeng Forbidden Land, I spent most of these years absorbing the origin of water. Even when I arrived at Wuming Mountain Range that day, I paid more attention to finding the teleportation tunnel to the Dawn Rain continent. At this point, Taoist Wu stopped and reminded, fellow cultivator, there is a swamp in front of us. There are powerful soul beasts in it. As soon as Taoist Wu finished speaking, Shui Chang's voice came from Xiaohua's token, seniors, slow down. We are about to turn north in the next 10 miles. Huh. Xiaohua laughed. It seems that the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance has already figured out the situation around Wuming Mountain Range. From here to the heaven and earth confinement that you saw earlier, it's about 1,000,000 miles away, right? With the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance's speed and method, it will take more than a year. Too slow. Lightning Immortal muttered, fellow cultivator, why don't we snatch that blood talisman and search its soul directly to see what means the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance has? We will go there ourselves. There are not many good people among these cultivators heading to the Dawn Rain continent. Yes, there aren't many good people. Xiaohua nodded and looked around. It's nothing to kill these 50,000 cultivators, but the soul search might not succeed. Why don't we directly find the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master Lian Feng? At this point, Xiaohua frowned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Ancestor Yu Ji, who wasn't too far away from him. This reckless thing was actually discussing with Venomous Stone on how to kill him in the teleportation tunnel. Of course, it would be best to kill him in front of Beauty Yu to achieve the effect of killing the chicken to scare the monkey and make Beauty Yu submit. Kill. Xiaohua was instantly filled with killing intent. He wanted to follow Lightning Immortal's idea and kill these several tens of thousands of nascent soul cultivators who were possessed by the devil race. He wanted to search Du Peng's soul directly. But just as this thought appeared, a pure and holy luster suddenly appeared in the distant horizon. This luster streaked across the sky and blocked the path of the several tens of thousands of Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance disciples. Zhang Jie. Xiaohua was stunned and inwardly said in surprise, why did she come here? Could it be that she discovered the abnormality of Du Peng and the others and wants to kill these devils? However, contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, Zhang Jie didn't use any sacred light realm technique to look at the several tens of thousands of humans. Instead, he stood on a distant mountain peak and frowned as he looked at the distant Wuming mountain range. On the other hand, Du Peng, who was flying neither too fast nor too slow, had a tense expression as he hurriedly ordered the 50,000 cultivators to stop. He hurriedly flew in front of Zhang Jie and respectfully saluted, "Greetings, senior." Zhang Jie glanced at Du Peng with a face full of disgust and said, "No need to call me senior. I can't be considered your senior." Du Peng didn't dare to offend Zhang Jie and hurriedly said, But Junior really doesn't know what to call me other than this title." Zhang Jie originally wanted him to call him by his real name, but when she thought about how her name came from the mouth of a devil, she impatiently waved her hand and said, "Whatever. What took you so long?" "Senior." Du Peng hurriedly smiled and said, "Going to the lost place isn't an easy task. Think about it, even with your strength, you can't find a way to pass through this heaven and earth restriction. How can we, the cultivators of the human world, pass through so easily? If we don't fully prepare, going to the Wuming mountain range is suicide. We've been preparing for almost 600 years. Zhang Jie sneered and said, "Could it be that you're plotting something again? Senior, please spare my life." Du Peng wanted to kowtow, but when he thought of the 50,000 cultivators behind him, he suppressed the fear in his heart and hurriedly begged, "Junior is just a small fly in front of Senior. I definitely wouldn't dare to have any thoughts. Moreover, Junior knows that it's impossible for Junior to pass through the Wuming mountain range. I still have to rely on Senior's help. Think about it, Junior wouldn't have any plans." However, the way to the lost place is still in the hands of Alliance Master Lien Feng. If he doesn't want to, nobody can do anything to him. Back then, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Alliance issued an order for Lien Feng to hand over the way to pass through the Wuming Mountain Range to the Heavenly Alliance, but he refused. In the end, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Alliance had no choice but to ignore this matter. Therefore, what Junior can do is to make this trip as soon as possible. As for the details, it's still up to Alliance Master Lien Feng. You have so many disciples, how long will it take to get there? Zhang Jie looked around and said, "How about I take you with me?" Just as he said this, Zhang Jie immediately noticed Xiao Hua in the crowd. Although Xiao Hua had concealed his cultivation and even his appearance was different from before, Zhang Jie, an angel of the Holy Light Realm, could still see through him at a glance. "Zhang Jie." Xiao Hua hurriedly transmitted his voice to him, "I'm also going to the lost place. We have the same goal, so don't talk too much." You can actually hear me?" Zhang Jie's holy face was filled with surprise, and he asked again, "Are you still a cultivator of the mortal realm?" "That's all for later, I'll talk about it later." Xiao Hua was not afraid of Zhang Jie, who was suppressed by the laws of heaven and earth in the Yilin continent, and said softly, "Since you can't find the transmission channel to the lost place, why don't we follow this demon and see what tricks their Alliance Master Lien Feng has?" But Zhang Jie nodded slightly and looked at Du Peng. At this moment, Du Peng hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Senior, please don't use any magical powers." Since Zhang Jie had listened to Xiao Hua's words, of course he would not use any magical powers, but he asked softly, "Why?" "Firstly, there are many soul beasts of the sorcerer god in the Wuming Mountain Range. Who knows if there are any particularly powerful ones?" Du Peng explained, "If we attract them, it will be disadvantageous to this trip. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is, during this period of time in the Wuming Mountain Range, I will be training 50,000 cultivators. Although most of these cultivators are disciples of the younger generation, they have never been here personally. Not only do they not know the dangers of this place, but they also do not cooperate well with each other. Only after they have gone through this period of training can they cooperate well with each other, and only then can we safely pass through the transmission channel in the Wuming Mountain Range. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and... Chapter 5021. All right. Zhang Jie nodded helplessly and was about to fly away again. "Senior." Du Peng hurriedly called out. "Don't worry. If you leave, I won't be able to contact you. If there were any abnormalities, wouldn't it affect our plans?" Zhang Jie hesitated. She looked at the humans in the distance with undisguised disgust. As an angel of the Holy Light Realm, she didn't even look down on humans in the mortal realm. How could she tolerate these humans who had been possessed by demons? She said coldly, "Although we have a cooperation agreement, I have my own bottom line. If you want to reach the Lost Land alive, don't create any more trouble." After saying that, Zhang Jie turned around and turned into a white light, shooting into the sky and disappearing in a moment. Damn it! Du Peng gritted his teeth and only dared to curse in his heart. He then turned to look at the demons and nascent soul cultivators who were frightened by the holy aura of the Holy Light Realm in Zhang Jie's body and smiled. "Everyone, did you see that? We're not the only ones who want to go to the Lost Land. There are many seniors and experts. And they can't pass through the Wuming Mountain Range alone. They still have to rely on us to defeat the Immortal Alliance. So don't worry. With such help, we'll have a better chance of passing through the Wuming Mountain Range and entering the Lost Land." Then, under Du Peng's command, the 50,000 cultivators followed the plan in an orderly manner, avoiding the powerful soul beasts and continuing to move forward. As for Xiao Hua, he thought to himself, "Damn it, an angel as strong as Zhang Jie also tried to find a way to pass through the Wuming Mountain Range, but she couldn't pass through it. Instead, she chose to cooperate with Du Peng, who was possessed by a demon. Why should I act rashly? Why don't I just follow behind them and see what different methods they have? Furthermore, the time spent in the Wumeng mountain range is also very precious. Instead of killing all the demons and rushing to the Wumeng mountain range, why don't we use this time to distribute the good seeds and millet seeds to the Yilin continent and the Wumeng mountain range, and save more people? This Zhang Jie is interesting. The Thunderbolt Immortal laughed. When she met us that day, she was hesitant and didn't say anything. I thought she had some secrets. So it turns out that she's working with the demons and is afraid that we'll find out. For the Holy Light Realm to be able to stand on equal footing with the Buddhist kingdom, they naturally have their own strengths. Maitreya Buddha World Honored One also said, "This angel is similar to my Buddha nation's Arhat. She's not good at lying. Whatever she says should be true. Hee, there's no need to care about others." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Everyone, I will be feigning civility here. I cannot leave as I please." The important task of distributing rice seeds and millet seeds will be handed over to everyone. It's all right. Huang Tong laughed heartily. Now that we have reached the grand completion stage, we can travel across the Yilin mainland in a flash. Fellow Taoist, you only need to ask the Fortune Gate disciples to prepare the seeds. Between saving people and killing demons, Xiaohua easily chose to save people. In the following days, Xiaohua coldly watched as Ancestor Yu Ji and the others discussed how to kill him and how to conquer the Lost Land. He also slowly approached the core of the Wuming mountain range with the Immortal Alliance's disciples. As for the Thunderbolt Immortal, Taoist Witch, and the others, they took the seeds and millet seeds prepared by the Fortune Gate disciples and used the space escape technique to travel to various parts of the Yilin mainland. The heavenly beings even took the Kunlun mirror and led many Fortune Gate disciples to distribute the seeds. In just a few months, Taoist Master Zhao's reputation had spread like wildfire in the Dawn Rain mainland. Only the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance were not able to reconcile immediately. After all, the Tao Alliance had Old Man Gu Qiong, Taoist Ji Yen, and the Heaven Alliance had Bright Moon Householder and the Yi family's ancestor. The two super-immortal alliances had other interests to deal with and had to compromise. However, after the Heaven Sacrificial Abyss was unsealed, the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance's cultivators began to interact with each other. The hostility that had been frozen for many years finally began to thaw. Xiaohua's name naturally replaced Zhang Xiaohua's name under Old Man Gu Qiong and Bright Moon Householder's intentions. Of course, Old Man Gu Qiong and Bright Moon Householder obeyed Xiaohua's instructions and did not dare to say much about his origins and whereabouts. They only said that Taoist Master Xiao was a senior from the Yilin mainland who had traveled the world in his early years. Now that he had returned, he was moved by his benevolence and had passed on a modified cultivation technique. In order to reassure the Yilin mainland's cultivators, Xiaohua had gradually become the spokesperson of the Tao Ancestor and the Tao Venerate under the two Immortal Alliances' influence. The cultivation technique was also bestowed by the Tao Ancestor and the Tao Venerate. The Thunderbolt Immortal and the others had traveled the Yilin mainland and naturally heard these rumors. They also guessed the thoughts of the two Immortal Alliances' leaders and laughed it off. After all, Xiaohua needed the power of faith. Moreover, the Tao Ancestor and the Tao Venerate had indeed bestowed Tao seeds. With these two Tao seeds, Xiaohua could complete the modification of the nascent soul cultivation technique and the nascent soul cultivation technique in a short period of time. Therefore, these rumors on the Yilin mainland could be considered to be true. Xiaohua and his doppelgangers were in full swing to save the world. The Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance also approached the Wuming mountain range in an orderly manner. After leaving the Changchang Plains, they began to enter the depths of the Wuming mountain range. The mountain peaks were getting higher and higher, and the abyss would appear from time to time. Many swamps, deep ponds, and miasma filled the area. However, these were nothing in Du Peng's eyes because the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance had already left disciples in the mountain range. Every time they arrived at a new place, Du Peng would release a special messaging talisman. Before long, the disciples of the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance would come out to meet him and lead the 50,000 cultivators into the depths of the mountain range. Of course, there would always be accidents. Sometimes, after the messaging talisman was released, no disciples came over. Du Peng had no choice but to brace himself and barge in. There were also times when powerful soul beasts would appear in originally safe places, and the strength of these soul beasts would far surpass the divine incarnation level. And sometimes, an indescribable astronomical phenomenon would appear, and the Wuming mountain range would have a natural disaster that even Du Peng couldn't avoid. Therefore, seeing the gloomy sky getting closer and closer, the Yi-Lin mainland's Immortal Alliance disciples and several thousand nascent soul cultivators also lost 30% of their numbers. However, as the saying goes, good people don't live long, but evil people live for 100 years. Those few people who would send voice transmissions to Xiao Hua's ears from time to time, saying some dirty things, such as Ancestor Yu Ji, Master Du Shi, Shi Qing, and Huang Chufan, didn't lose a single one. They were all alive and kicking. At this time, Xiao Hua already didn't have the time to care about these little flies, because after passing through the Changchang Plains, the entire Wuming mountain range began to give birth to a kind of heavy pressure. Like the dark clouds before a rainstorm, it accumulated bit by bit and slowly pressed down on Xiao Hua's heart, entangling Xiao Hua's Naiwen palace, and entangling Xiao Hua's quasi-ninth tribulation's scattered nascent soul. As Xiao Hua's body moved forward, his supernatural powers were slowly confined. Xiao Hua was like this, and so were his doppelgangers. Not only did they activate the space escape technique, but even the position of space gradually became blurred. In the end, except for Taoist, which, the other doppelgangers simply hid in Xiao Hua's body and didn't come out again. Compared to Xiao Hua, Taoist, which was much better. He was born as a witch and cultivated a witch body, so the influence of the Wuming mountain range's innate restriction was much smaller. When they were about to reach the core of the Wuming mountain range, Taoist, which stopped and went back into Xiao Hua's body. Even Taoist, which found it difficult to move, so Xiao Hua didn't dare to be careless. He took out the Kunlun mirror, sword gourd, and other items from the space and put them in his arms, in case of emergency. After placing the magic treasure, Xiao Hua thought for a moment and waved his hand again. A thumb-sized translucent ring fell into his hand. It was a crystal skull. As soon as the crystal skull appeared in the Wuming mountain range, a layer of mist immediately appeared on the crystal skull. The mist gradually filled the skull, and the illusion of the untainted land and the blood sea and the dried bones alternated between the untainted land and the blood sea. This crystal skull ring was given to Xiao Hua by Elder Jianji of the Hudu Stockade after he returned from Wushan Ridge in the depths of the Million Meng Mountains. He said that it was the Witch King's Witch King token, and he invited Xiao Hua to visit Wushan Ridge when he was free. He said that there would be things that Xiao Hua couldn't imagine. Now that Xiao Hua was going to pass through the heaven and earth restriction formation, he would be on the other side of the Million Meng Mountains. If there were no accidents, he would be in the depths of the Wuming mountain range, and most likely Wushan Ridge. Therefore, Xiao Hua took out the crystal skull ring and wore it on his right finger. On this day, less than 30,000 cultivators regrouped and flew to a place filled with dark brown sand. Then they stopped. Du Peng carefully took out a fist-sized magical item. The magical item was shaped like a toad, and it was still being activated by his magic power. The toad turned into a dark green shadow and rushed into the ground, disappearing from sight. Du Peng ordered through the token, "Everyone, let's take a rest." Thus, Xiao Hua and the others descended and found a place to rest. Damn it, we've been flying for so long, but we still haven't reached the teleportation tunnel, and we haven't even seen a trace of the lost land. As soon as Patriarch Yuji landed, she immediately took out a jade bottle from her bosom and threw a pill into her mouth. While refining the pill, she cursed under her breath. "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come here." That's right. Venomous monk Du Shi looked around, his eyes filled with resentment. What kind of place is this? Not only is the heaven and earth energy thin, I can't even use my storage ring. My nascent soul is now trapped in my dantian, and I can't move it at all. If a soul beast appears, how am I supposed to deal with it? Xiao Hua put on an act and took out a pill and threw it into his mouth. He squinted his eyes and looked around. Although it was afternoon, the sun wasn't hanging above their heads. Layers upon layers of indescribable gloominess covered the sky, thicker than the dark clouds. Within that gloominess, there seemed to be layers upon layers of mountains, and also seemed to be surging waves. In the surroundings where Xiaohua and the others were standing, the air was also suffused with a kind of stifling pressure. Others might not be able to see it, but Xiaohua could see it clearly. Waves of cryptic fluctuations that were similar to that of a magic array were floating down, filling up the space and blocking the void. Not to mention the teleportation of a supreme cultivator, even Xiaohua's spatial escape technique was unable to tear apart this flying silk. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support it, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, collect a collection, gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5022. What made Xiaohua feel somewhat gratified was that although he had yet to reach a higher level of mastery in his light escape technique, as he flew, he could still see patches of brilliance like clouds in the sky. It was just that these clouds were much thinner than the clouds outside the Wuming mountain range. This might not be enough to hide Xiaohua's figure, but it was enough to show that the light escape technique had a unique use under the restrictions of this world. The fluctuations here are indeed different from the 3 great forbidden arrays that this Xiao passed through all those years ago. As Xiaohua looked at the fluctuations that were everywhere in the surroundings, he pondered to himself. Looks like it's a different type of forbidden array from that immortal array. However, these fluctuations contain the power of mountains, soul power, and netherworld power. It's really similar to a soul formation. The problem is, since this is the Wuming mountain range, which is also the origin of soul cultivators, why would an almighty sorcerer separate the Wuming mountain range from the millions of Meng mountains? Could it be that the separation of soul cultivators wasn't caused by someone, but by the power of heaven and earth? Also, these innate fluctuations seem to vary from person to person. If the confinement force I'm suffering right now were to fall on those gold core cultivators of the Defeat You Immortal Union, wouldn't they have been crushed to death? Oh, also, when nearly 30,000 cultivators were moving together, the pressure of heaven and earth seemed to have decreased a lot. Now that everyone is resting, I actually feel as if there is a huge mountain pressing down on me from the sky. I can't even move. No wonder people as strong as Long Shensi and Bright Moon Householder didn't dare to take risks in the Wuming mountain range. No wonder Du Peng wants to organize 50,000 cultivators to break through the Wuming mountain range. While Xiaohua was thinking, a voice rang in his ears. Hey brat, come here for a moment. Xiaohua was stunned. He stopped thinking and turned around to look at the source of the voice. Wasn't it Huang Chufan who was looking at him with his bell-sized eyes? Along the way, although Huang Chufan did not transmit his voice, every time he mentioned something Ancestor Jade Fat, Venomous Master Poison Stone, and Shi Qing would clearly explain it to him. It was as if Huang Chufan was the leader of this group. Xiaohua didn't know what evil deeds Huang Chufan had done, but he heard Huang Chufan's voice transmission and the order he issued. Xiaohua also knew that this guy wasn't a good person. Therefore, Xiaohua only glanced at Huang Chufan indifferently. He didn't have any intention of moving, as if he didn't hear anything. Damn it! Huang Chufan was furious. He looked at the unremarkable cultivator who had ignored everyone along the way and didn't even say a word. The disciples of the Defeat Valley Immortal Union flew up from their resting place and shouted to the surroundings. When Shui Chong was sent flying by Huang Chufan, Xiaohua was quietly standing on top of a rock. He looked at Huang Chufan who was angrily flying towards him, as if he was scared silly. Shui Chong shouted and rushed into the sky to escape. Huang Chufan had already raised his fist, and the stone pillar-like arm broke through the air, making a boom 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 sound. Xiaohua didn't doubt that if he was an ordinary nascent soul cultivator, and his nascent soul was now imprisoned by the restriction of the Wuming mountain range, this punch would definitely smash his head. You brought this upon yourself, you can't live. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the fist coming towards him. He didn't have any intention of dodging and only said coldly, Mirage. Shui Chang's exclamation came into Huang Chufan's ears at this time. Huang Chufan obviously didn't know what mirage was. His expression was only slightly stunned, and even the fist that was smashing towards Xiaohua's head didn't stop. However, just when Huang Chufan had an evil grin on his face and saw that his fist was about to land on Xiaohua's head, and that seemingly unyielding iron bone was about to be smashed by him, a strange gust of wind suddenly emerged from the ground below Huang Chufan. The gravel that was still spiraling and trembling a moment ago suddenly soared into the sky. A yellow-brown shadow that was at least several hundred zhang in size rose from the ground and swept towards Xiaohua and Huang Chufan. What made Huang Chufan feel strange was that there was no special sound where this shadow broke through the air. There were even several extremely sharp suction forces in the nearby space, and 3 to 5 gusts of wind blew towards the light shadow. However, all the vigilance of a nascent soul cultivator was born in Huang Chufan's heart at this time. He clearly knew that the light shadow was the so-called mirage. Moreover, if he insisted on killing Xiaohua, he would also be injured under the mirage's light shadow. Therefore, Huang Chufan didn't hesitate anymore. He didn't care about killing Xiaohua and hurriedly urged his body to follow the direction of the light shadow's attack and rush towards the sky. However, what made Huang Chufan surprised was that Xiaohua, who was also enveloped by the mirage's light shadow, still had a faintly discernible sneer on his face, and his body didn't move at all. Is this guy really stupid? Huang Chufan didn't understand, but in just a moment, Huang Chufan knew who the real fool was. Because just as he flew out a few dozen feet, the huge light shadow that was born from the ground suddenly disappeared, and above his head, a tentacle that was only a few dozen feet long suddenly appeared out of thin air. This tentacle was full of sharp spikes that were several feet long, and between the spikes, there were several vortex-like black holes. The sharp sound of wind and the suction force were emitted from these black holes, and just as Huang Chufan's gaze swept past, a strange light shadow flashed from the edge of the black holes. That light shadow was like a dozen huge tentacles that emerged from the space near Huang Chufan and fell towards Huang Chufan and Xiaohua. Damn it! Huang Chufan immediately understood that the previous light shadow on the ground was an illusion, and the tentacles that fell from the sky were the real killer. Huang Chufan rushed up with all his strength, and the tentacles of the mirage fell with all their strength. In particular, the tentacles of the mirage streaked across the air at an extremely fast speed, and there wasn't much sound. When Huang Chufan came to his senses, the sharp tentacles had already approached, and the biting cold had already been transmitted from the spikes of the tentacles, causing Huang Chufan's whole body to be covered in a layer of cold sweat in this scorching afternoon. His nascent soul was imprisoned, and he couldn't use teleportation, and the amount of true essence that could be activated was also very little. Huang Chufan steeled his heart, and the muscles in his arms twitched with a pew-pew sound. A force that was fiercer than the one that attacked Xiaohua just now was generated from Huang Chufan's arms, and his arms instantly became a little thicker. Huang Chufan raised his arms as if he was raising fire to burn the sky, and wanted to rely on the 8-9 mysteries that he secretly cultivated to avoid this disaster. Pooh! The tentacles of the mirage fell, and Huang Chufan's 8-9 mysteries' golden body that he painstakingly cultivated was like paper. The spikes easily pierced Huang Chufan's arms, and the tentacles streaked past, breaking the bones and flesh of Huang Chufan's arms. Huang Chufan screamed in pain, and his body actually wanted to fly backward with the help of the force. However, before he could fly, the vortex-like black hole above the tentacles poked out with a woo. A skull that looked like a skeleton stretched out. The skull passed through the flying flesh and blood like lightning and fell on the top of Huang Chufan's head. Pooh! There was another muffled sound. The small head of the mirage smashed Huang Chufan's head and went straight into his body. The look of disbelief in Huang Chufan's eyes disappeared like a lamp being extinguished, and his body fell into the air. However, things didn't go as planned. Just as Huang Chufan's body fell, the small head above the tentacles of the mirage retracted from the top of Huang Chufan's head. On the small skull-like head, a nascent soul with tightly closed eyes was held in the skull's mouth. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and reward it. Thank you for all kinds of support. Chapter 5023. Even death can't wipe out his crimes. Xiao Hua said indifferently. His figure didn't stay at the same spot as he landed on the ground. Because right above Xiao Hua's head, another tentacle strangely appeared and chopped towards the spot where Xiao Hua originally stood. From Shui Chang's warning to Huang Chufan being killed by the sea serpent's tentacle, only a few breaths of time had passed. The other groups of cultivators who were fleeing in panic might not have noticed this tragic scene, but Ancestor Yu Ji, Venomous Stone, and Shi Qing saw it clearly. The three of them almost simultaneously had an unimaginable feeling in their hearts. How is this possible? However, just because this thought appeared, it didn't mean that the three of them weren't afraid. Although their movements were a bit slower than Men Ci Feng and Hui Jin's group, when they moved their bodies, they also flew back more than 100 zhang and fled back the way they came. Just as they flew away, several tentacles streaked past where they were standing one after another, but they all missed. If the three of them hesitated for half a second, perhaps they would have the same ending as Huang Chufan. Lucky! The three of them looked at Dian Hongji and the others who were following them and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Ancestor Yu Ji and the others were lucky to escape, but the cultivators in other places didn't have such good luck. Countless tentacles of different sizes appeared out of thin air, enveloping the nearby space. Like the sickles used by farmers to harvest leeks, they wantonly killed the cultivators. Pitiful screams could be heard one after another. What was special was that at this moment, the earth began to tremble violently. A ravine that was several thousand zhang long split open on the ground. A huge soul beast with countless strange soul imprints on its body squeezed out of this ravine. The countless tentacles that were harvesting life came from this body. The soul beast looked like a huge tree branch as it slowly rushed out of the ground. Countless tiny pitch-black fog mixed with the smell of blood permeated the air like ink. A netherworld aura that made people lose their souls soared into the sky, rapidly spreading in all directions. The originally hot and humid weather instantly turned cold, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Sorcerer God? Xiao Hua looked at the aura around the soul beast's tentacles and the netherworld energy around the tentacles. Unconsciously, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he thought to himself, "You only have the strength of an 8th grade elemental energy, yet you dare to be called a sorcerer god? GG. The soul beast flew out and its entire body slightly trembled. Outside its surface, strands of dark green light appeared. Under the light, natural patterns appeared. These patterns were very similar to the green seal text. When the soul beast trembled, it let out a shrill sound. This sound echoed in the air and gave birth to an effect similar to the green seal text. Waves of strange wind blades fell from the sky like flying swords and pierced towards the fleeing disciples of the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance. Forget it. Xiao Hua's current cultivation had already surpassed the soul beast's perception, so the tentacles didn't attack Xiao Hua. However, seeing the entire scene in such a sorry state, Xiao Hua didn't have the interest to continue watching the show. He sighed and raised his right hand, about to slap his own forehead. Right at this moment, he heard tens of millions of milky white light strands appear in the air to his left like swimming fish. Then, waves of Kia singing could be heard. Although the light strands were small and faint, after they fell, they were like flowing water that slowly washed away the netherworld aura of the soul beast's tentacles. What was special was that the singing voice sounded holy, deep, and even like the voice of a child. However, where the singing voice passed, the mournful sound of the green seal text ghosts was immediately covered up. The wind blades that could easily kill a golden core cultivator actually turned into a cool breeze in an instant. See. Xiao Hua stood in the air and looked at this somewhat strange scene. He sucked in a breath of cold air. This angel of the holy light realm, could it be that he's the natural nemesis of soul cultivators? That day, when Zhang Jie was bound by the laws of heaven and earth of the Yi-Lin continent, the divine ability he used was only fleeting. This Xiao Hua didn't see the specific power, because on the Yi-Lin continent, the battle strength of an angel is only SOSO. Now, it seems that the divine ability of an angel is far from what this Xiao Hua thought. This Xiao Hua has to have a whole new level of respect for Zhang Jie's divine ability. Since the angel Zhangjie took action, Xiaohuan naturally didn't need to reveal his divine ability. He just stood in a hidden place and watched. Since the soul beast's tentacles were called the sorcerer god, they naturally had their own strong points. Seeing that its wind blades were destroyed, it couldn't help but be furious. The huge body of the soul beast's tentacles suddenly trembled again, and its whole body rose and fell like the waves of the sea. Along with this rise and fall, the sound of the green seal text from before became more and more resounding. In particular, the thousands of tentacles were suffused with a bloody light, and the rich aura of the netherworld's blood sea rushed out from this bloody light. The aura of the nether blood sea was naturally the aura of death. However, it had just been born, yet everything within 1,000 miles had already withered. The disciples of the Immortal Alliance who had been desperately trying to escape earlier had now fallen one by one like scallions. Rumble! Xiaohua slightly frowned. Lightning surged around his body, and he was just about to take action. Woo-woo. At this time, the hymn that was suppressed by the green seal text suddenly became resounding, like a passionate battle song. At the same time, the holy light from before also suddenly condensed, thickened, and strengthened. It was like thousands of troops rushing out from all directions, encircling and suppressing the soul beast's tentacles. However, just as this holy light covered the aura of death emitted by the soul beast's tentacles, it immediately stopped. The holy light condensed in the vicinity of 1,000 li, and unexpectedly revealed a strange land like a vineyard. Inside the vineyard, bunches of grapes were full and condensed. The scene of a harvest was clear at a glance. Shwa! A 7-colored pillar fell from the sky and shone on the vineyard. Under the pillar of light, a beautiful impatiens flower was revealed. The impatiens flower's charm was outstanding, and it slightly swayed in the mountain wind. Little bits of holy light sprinkled over the entire vineyard like seeds. The hymn gradually faded, and the impatiens flower slowly withered. The grapes in the vineyard also rotted and disappeared. The holy light penetrated layer by layer and entangled with the aura of the netherworld's blood sea. This penetration was so firm that the soul beast's tentacles couldn't stop it at all. The soul beast seemed to feel that something was wrong, and its huge body trembled again, and the surroundings became colder and colder. Some ice shards actually appeared in the originally hot air. Boom! Just as the holy light was about to disappear, the 7-colored holy light shone brightly. The originally withered impatiens flower grew again, but at this time, in the entire vineyard, countless seeds instantly sprouted, and a powerful life force washed away the netherworld's blood sea like spring water. And Xiaohua could clearly see that inside the impatiens flower, Angel Zhangjie was fluttering his 7 layers of light feathers and slowly dancing. A kind of pious, holy, and pure aura was born from the light feathers and dance, and it was even more dense than the spring rain that moistened everything within 1,000 li. Those originally unconscious disciples of the Failure Valley Immortal Union woke up one by one. They were somewhat shocked as they looked at the holy light rippling around their bodies, and were at a loss. Looking at the soul beast's tentacles again, it was irritable at first, but as Angel Zhangjie danced and the hymn lingered, it actually calmed down. Not only did the netherworld's aura gradually fade, those sharp and elusive tentacles also withdrew into the soul beast's body, and like the cold and ice shards of the severe winter, it also disappeared like the wind, and a piece of warmth, a piece of peace. He walked through the valley of death, where his feet stepped, death could not defeat him. He came from the heavenly kingdom of resurrection, where his hands touched, resurrection descended upon the earth. Angel Zhangjie seemed to be singing, his voice was gentle, and every word seemed to fall into everyone's heart. Even the soul beast's tentacles began to slowly withdraw its body. Life force. This is the power of life. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the holy light flowing in the air. He looked at the strands of indistinct yet tenacious power of life and thought inwardly, not only does this holy light contain the power of faith, it also contains the power of life. What's special is that it is a kind of life force that has experienced death. It is indeed somewhat mysterious. This mystery is not something this Xiao can understand now. Moreover, This holy light is definitely not what this Xiao thought before. When it fell into the bodies of these humans who were possessed by the demon race, it actually could not kill the demon race. If not for Angel Zhang Jie's kind heart, and not willing to casually kill, even if the other party was a demon race. That is to say, the holy light is still somewhat different from the Buddha's light. If the Buddha's light fell into the bodies of these defeated immortal allies, they will definitely fight with the demon race. After the hymn finished, Angel Zhang Jie also withdrew the 7 dancing light feathers, and the holy light that filled the sky gradually disappeared. The soul beast's tentacles also obediently fell to the ground, and gradually disappeared without a trace. Senior. Du Peng was somewhat afraid of the holy light, but he still braced himself and flew to a place not far from Zhang Jie, bowed and said, "This junior thanks Senior for saving their lives on behalf of the tens of thousands of disciples." The floating holy light fell into the angel's body, and Zhang Jie's figure and cold appearance appeared again. Zhang Jie glanced at Du Peng and replied, "No need to thank me, even if I did not help, you all would have been fine." Senior is too polite. Du Peng did not understand what Zhang Jie meant, but he did not dare to ask too much, and said carefully, "If not for Senior, we all would have died this time." Unfortunately, Zhang Jie did not wait for Du Peng to finish, and interrupted him, asking, "When will we reach the teleportation tunnel?" "According to the plan, there are still..." Du Peng peeked at Zhang Jie's expression and whispered, "There are still 3 more months." 3 more months? Zhang Jie did not get angry as Du Peng imagined, but slightly frowned, and 7 colors appeared in his eyes as he looked around, and said, "We are already close to the cutting blade ridge. Why do we still need 3 more months?" "Senior." Du Peng hurriedly replied, "The closer we are to the cutting blade ridge, the stronger the soul beasts are. This junior does not have any disciples here, so everything depends on this junior and the others to move forward by themselves. Therefore, we may have to take a long detour. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and... Chapter 50-24. Zhang Jie stared at the gray haze in the distance. After a moment of thought, he said, "We're already in the depths of the Wuming mountain range. The path you've taken is very ingenious. You've managed to evade many powerful soul beasts and soul cultivators. However, that soul beast has already exposed your existence. My ability will also attract their attention. If you don't hurry to the tunnel in time, I'm afraid they'll chase after you." "Senior." Du Peng's face turned ugly. He bit his lip and begged, "It's not that I don't want to speed up. It's because we need to see the time to activate the tunnel." "What? We need to see the time?" Zhang Jie didn't understand. The tunnel doesn't always exist," Du Peng explained. "That's why you didn't discover the tunnel when you came here before. The teleportation tunnel can only appear at certain times and under certain conditions. So you've been flying for more than a year just to wait for that specific time?" Zhang Jie asked. "And if we don't meet the special conditions, we still can't activate the tunnel? If that's the case, why didn't you say so earlier?" Du Peng saw that Zhang Jie was getting angry. He smiled and said, "Senior, please don't be anxious. I didn't mean to hide anything from you. The specific time and specific conditions, my Liu Immortal Union already knows. This is the basis for Junior's cooperation with Senior. Senior doesn't need to worry about it. Moreover, Junior has been preparing for this for hundreds of years. Senior, please rest assured. Actually, to tell you the truth, some disciples of my Defeat Immortal Alliance have already arrived at the lost grounds through this teleportation tunnel. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to vow to cooperate with Senior. We're just using each other." Zhang Jie said. "There's no need to talk about cooperation. I'm ashamed to be in your team." He didn't know if Du Peng was cursing him in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. He smiled and said, "Senior, please hold on for a few more months. We'll be there soon. Sai, let's go that way." Zhang Jie pointed in a direction. "There aren't any powerful soul beasts there." Yes, thank you, Senior." Du Peng was overjoyed. He quickly thanked Zhang Jie and ordered his disciples to regroup. There is a limit to a person's patience. If they know that it is impossible within 100 years, they will not ask any more questions within 100 years. Xiaohua heard it clearly from afar and laughed inwardly, but if he knew that it was possible within a few days, then he wouldn't even be able to wait a day. Although Zhang Jie is an angel of the holy light realm, it's the same. From Du Peng's tone, Zhang Jie has been waiting in the Yilin continent for hundreds of years in order to go to the Lost Lands. But today, she can't even wait for 3 months. However, it's no wonder that Taoist priest Wu and Huang Tong didn't find anything the last time they came to Wuming Mountain. It turns out that the teleportation tunnel can only appear under special conditions and at special times. It's just that I don't know what this special time and condition is that it took Du Peng hundreds of years to prepare. The appearance of the spirit beast clam sea serpent caused another 10% of the disciples of the failure immortal union to die. In Xiaohua's group, Huang Chufan and ancestor Yuji died, and they were replaced by a female cultivator named Lan Yuxuan and a male cultivator named Su Luiyue. Among the 3 Golden Core disciples, Dian Hongji and Su Pei died, and 2 Golden Core disciples named Yi Ping and Zhang Qi were added. Xiaohua understood that Bai Fei and Yi Yun were safe and sound. Even Beauty Yu and Zhuang Chen were still alive and well. Bai Fei not dying was not out of Xiaohua's expectations. It would be strange if such a person who sought advantages and avoided disadvantages also died among tens of thousands of people. However, Yun, who was in the Golden Core realm, was also not injured. Xiaohua was a little surprised. It seemed that Bai Fei took good care of Yi Yun. Xiaohua had a better impression of Bai Fei. Because in his eyes, a person who could be wholeheartedly devoted to his lover, no matter how bad he was, couldn't be that bad. Of course, people like Tu Hong were still an exception. After the team was reorganized, half of the cultivators were lost. The remaining 25,000 cultivators set off again. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, because of Zhang Jie's guidance, they didn't encounter any more soul beasts. Moreover, because they were near the Broken Blade Ridge, which was the most powerful core of the heaven and earth restriction, not only were the natives of the Wuming Mountain range rare, but even soul cultivators rarely came. Zhang Jie's divine ability might have been discovered by powerful soul cultivators, but no one came to investigate. Of course, the ignorant were fearless. Even if the 24,999 cultivators didn't sense any danger and happily flew towards the Broken Blade Ridge, Xiaohua couldn't help but be frightened. He and Zhang Jie both had a cautious look on their faces because they clearly sensed that within tens of thousands of kilometers, there were 4 soul beasts of unknown strength sleeping. Moreover, the aura of these soul beasts was very weak. If Xiaohua didn't fly slowly, he wouldn't have noticed it. Damn it, could it be that the special time that Du Peng mentioned is the period when these soul beasts are sleeping? Xiaohua carefully withdrew his wisp of soul consciousness and secretly cursed in his heart, "There are 4 soul beasts of unknown strength within tens of thousands of kilometers, who knows how many more there are in other places." It's hard to imagine the ambition of Alliance Master Lian Feng of the Thump Immortal Union. He actually sent these Golden Core and nascent soul disciples to their deaths. As long as these soul beasts wake up, a yawn from them could turn these tens of thousands of disciples into ashes. The Broken Blade Ridge was already very close. It was as if one could reach out and touch the coldness of the mountain rocks. However, Xiaohua didn't act rashly. Like the other disciples of the Thump Immortal Union, he was still in groups of 10 and stopped to rest several kilometers away from the Broken Blade Ridge. It was slightly different from the previous rest. The 10 people in each group were strictly ordered not to stray too far away. It seemed that the special condition that Du Peng mentioned could be fulfilled at any time. The 20,000 cultivators could enter the transmission tunnel at any time. Xiaohua frowned as he looked at the Broken Blade Ridge not far away. A strange expression appeared on his face. The Broken Blade Ridge looked very ordinary. It was a towering mountain range that stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers. There were no shrubs or vines on the mountain range, only green mountain rocks. There was nothing special about the mountain rocks. There were cracks and faults on it, and it looked no different from an ordinary mountain range. What was special was that although the mountain range was tall, it was only 1,000 feet. Not to mention Xiaohua, even Bai Fei could see the peak of the mountain with a glance. However, the peak of the mountain wasn't the end of one's vision. On the peak of the mountain, the gloomy gray that seemed to have substance connected the sky with the mountain peak. Not to mention that it was difficult for people to climb to the peak, even cultivators found it difficult to fly to the peak. Even their vision was blocked by the gray nothingness. Xiaohua didn't know how others felt. He stood there and felt like he couldn't breathe. It was as if the entire sky above the Yilin continent had collapsed to the sky above the Broken Blade Ridge. It was as if the entire Yilin continent's boundary was condensed here, blocking in front of his head. The Broken Blade Ridge was similar to the place where Huang Tong and Taoist priest Wu had been before. However, the location wasn't here, but somewhere far away. However, the Broken Blade Ridge was the same as what Huang Tong had seen. There was a kind of dejection that couldn't be overcome. Moreover, there were only strands of fluctuations in the Wuming mountain range. Now, it had condensed into a giant mountain that was 1,000,000 times bigger and more powerful than the Broken Blade Ridge. It separated the entire heaven and earth. The thin radiance that Xiaohua had sensed earlier had already been torn to shreds here, turning into strands and wisps. Not to mention Xiaohua's body, even if Xiaohua moved, this radiance would shatter. Under the incomparably solemn power of heaven and earth, Xiaohua felt like he was an ant. He could only look up at it. A feeling of powerlessness rose from the bottom of his heart. In particular, Xiaohua's strength and supernatural powers that had surpassed the 9th level of essence power were completely suppressed under this restriction. He couldn't sense space, and spatial artifacts such as storage rings couldn't be used. It was as if the Broken Blade Ridge was pressing down on his shoulders, and there were several immortal binding ropes firmly binding his hands and feet. It was difficult for him to move and stay still. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed softly. He then looked at the 2 golden core cultivators beside him, Yi Ping and Zhang Qi, who could move freely. He thought to himself, no wonder the high-level cultivators of the Yilin continent were so agitated at the mention of the Wuming mountain range. No one was willing to come here. It turns out that the restriction of heaven and earth that separates the Yilin continent and the Dawn Rain continent is much more restrictive on high-level cultivators than on low-level cultivators. Now, I'm afraid my strength is not much different from that of Du Peng. However, what's the difference between this Broken Blade Ridge and the mountain range that Huang Tong and the rest had seen before? Why did Du Peng choose this place? Thinking of this, Xiaohua couldn't help but look at the angel Zhang Jie, who was standing alone in the distance like a celestial phoenix flower. The light and shadow around Zhang Jie's body was also greatly suppressed. The originally holy robe now looked like a white dress worn by a lady from a wealthy family. It no longer had its original power. However, Zhang Jie's face still had a slight frown of confusion, just like the expression she had when she first entered the Wuming mountain range. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua quietly activated his soul technique. The dim and almost invisible green color flowed in his body several times, and the mysterious wizard body was quietly born. As soon as the wizard body appeared, the unbearable suppression lessened a little. Xiaohua actually felt a sense of comfort. What kind of supernatural power is this? Soul cultivator? It was not beyond Xiaohua's expectations. As soon as Xiaohua's wizard body condensed, Zhang Jie's curious voice rang in Xiaohua's ears. You're a Dao sect cultivator. How can you be proficient in witchcraft? Haha. If you tell me your purpose of going to the Lost Land, I can naturally answer your question. Xiaohua was in a good mood and replied softly with a voice transmission. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5025. That's my secret. Zhang Jie said reluctantly. That's also my secret. Xiaohua replied with a smile. Alright. Zhang Jie had no choice but to stop asking about it. He changed the topic and asked, how do you feel after using this witchcraft? Previously, I felt like I couldn't breathe, but now, I feel more at ease. Xiaohua didn't hide anything and replied, and I feel that this witchcraft can exert 40% of its power under the confinement of heaven and earth. I see. Zhang Jie nodded and said, I was wondering why the restrictive spell in the Wuming mountain range was so strange. It turns out that it was the work of soul cultivators. Could it be that there are treasures of soul cultivators in the Lost Land, and they want to prevent others from finding them? I don't think so. Xiaohua answered casually, but after saying those words, he realized something and changed the topic with a smile. Because in the Wuming mountain range, how can there be an existence that surpasses the laws of the Yilin continent? The restrictive spell in front of us seems to be more powerful than the laws of heaven and earth, so it's unlikely that it was created by soul cultivators. Also, think about it, the Wuming mountain range can't possibly end here, right? On the other side of the Broken Blade Ridge, there might be soul cultivators as well. Soul cultivators shouldn't have divided their branch of soul cultivators into two, right? You're right. Zhang Jie pondered for a moment and nodded. But I don't understand. I feel that there's something strange about this restrictive spell, but I can't tell exactly what it is. It's as if it's already at the tip of my tongue, but I've forgotten it. It's really strange. If even you don't know, then I don't know either. Xiaohua answered helplessly. Zhang Jie was an angel of the holy light realm, not a human. Xiaohua naturally couldn't tell her the situation of the immortal formation between the three continents and the Dawn Rain continent. He also couldn't explain the difference between the restrictive spell and the immortal formation here. Since you've already used your soul spell, can you find any transmission tunnel here? Zhang Jie asked again. Xiaohua shook his head. I've already explored it. This restrictive spell goes straight through the heaven and earth, and it's seamless. There's no flaw at all. How can there be a transmission tunnel here? Zhang Jie was also surprised and said, I'm the same as you. I only feel that there's a mountain-like restriction in front of me. It was as if the entire sky had fallen, and there was no sign of life at all. However, the strange thing is that I once went to the sky nearby in my early years. Although the restriction was like a mountain, the wind in the sky could still blow through, and light should be able to pass through as well. However, my holy light couldn't pass through. Forget it, there's no need to probe for now. Xiaohua says with a smile, I once asked the two alliance heads of the Heaven Alliance and the Dao Alliance. They didn't know how to pass through this restriction either. Since this Du Peng said that they have a way to defeat the Immortal Alliance, and that there are people who have successfully passed, then let's just wait for them to come up with something. I don't think the words of the demon race can be trusted. Zhang Jie shook his head slightly, expressing his disappointment in the cooperation with the demon race. Then why are you still cooperating with him? Xiaohua asks back. Back then, I wanted to pass through the Wuming mountain range to go to the Lost Land. However, when I arrived at the location of this heaven and earth restriction, I couldn't move even a single step. When I was worried, I met Du Peng. He said that he had a way to pass through this restriction, but he needed my help. Zhang Jie doesn't hide too much and tells the story of the matter. I had no choice but to cooperate with him. However, this wait actually took nearly 1,000 years. Du Peng is a human who was possessed by a demon general. I don't know his character. Xiaohua thinks for a moment and says, but I know some demons. They're definitely not what you think. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua can finish, Zhang Jie decisively interrupts and says impatiently, what's so good about the demon race? They're even darker and more bloodthirsty than the human race. Don't mention it again. All right. Xiaohua shrugs and doesn't say any more. At this time, Du Peng quietly flies in front of Zhang Jie and bows, Senior, you must still remember our previous agreement? Zhang Jie looks at Du Peng in confusion and says, of course I remember. What's wrong? It's good that Senior remembers. Du Peng sighs in relief and says with a smile, Junior is afraid that after so many years, you've forgotten. How is that possible? Zhang Jie replies indifferently, I'm a man of my word. As long as we're in the transmission tunnel, I'll help you if I can. If I can pass through the transmission tunnel, I'll definitely take you there. That's good, that's good. Du Peng obtains Zhang Jie's guarantee and a smile appears on his face. He turns around to leave the flying boat and says, since Senior keeps his promise, Junior will also begin to prepare. When Du Peng flies far away, he sends out an order for some disciples of the Failure Valley Immortal Union to go over. It seems like he's whispering something. Only then does Zhang Jie send a strange sound transmission. Xiao Hua, what does Du Peng mean by this? Xiao Hua hears this and laughs in his heart. He sends a sound transmission to Zhang Jie and says, it's very simple. Because you previously subdued the soul beast tentacle, and in these 3 months, you pointed out an extremely safe path. Therefore, he's afraid that you'll raise more conditions, or that you'll treat your previous sacrifice as a condition and reduce your previous promise to him after entering the transmission tunnel. Boring. Zhang Jie mutters in disgust. What are these demons thinking every day? If I've already agreed, how can I not keep my word? Xiao Hua blushes with shame. He knows that the reason Du Peng is so worried isn't because of the demon general Ji Peng, but more because of Du Peng's own human weakness. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua unconsciously looks to the other side. Bai Fei and Yi Yun are standing 3 kilometers away. Bai Fei's expression is normal, but Yi Yun's pair of eyes glances at Bai Fei from time to time. It seems that after more than a year of interaction, the two have progressed very quickly. This Bai Fei said before that if we enter the transmission tunnel together, he will lend this Xiao a hand. I wonder if he will agree? However, since we're no longer in the same group, he must have forgotten about this matter. Xiao Hua ridicules in his heart. He knows that Bai Fei's words can't be taken seriously. However, just as his gaze leaves, he suddenly raises his eyebrows and returns to the space between Yi Yun's eyebrows. He says curiously, that's strange, why is there an additional ball of yin qi between Yi Yun's eyebrows? Could it be that something went wrong with her cultivation recently? Seniors. At this moment, Shui Chong opens his mouth and says, Lord's special envoy has already sent a message asking everyone to take out their own selection treasures. We'll be ready. Xiao Hua retracts his gaze and takes out the windy wheel from his Taoist robe. Everyone beside him also takes out the treasures they obtained during the selection. Lan Yuxuan takes out a copper ore that's entirely yellow in color. It's engraved with thunder patterns. When it's swung, there's no need to channel transcendence energy and the sound of thunder will be produced. It's the famous roaring thunder ore. Venomous master poison stone took out 2 palm-sized pieces of wood. The wood pieces were hollowed out in the shape of wings, and the edges of the wood pieces were engraved with strange patterns. They looked like green seal scripts, but also like Dao talismans. Xiao Hua had heard venomous master poison stones say that these magic treasures were wood spirit wings. Shi Qing took out a blue stone puppet. This stone puppet was also very strange. It was covered with misty textures, and as Shi Qing waved it, countless wisps of smoke would seep out from the textures. This wisp of smoke would fall into the air and immediately disappear. There was nothing special about it, but the name Light Smoke Puppet was as good as a treasure. Su Yuyue's name sounds very poetic, but he doesn't look refined and looks similar to the fallen Huang Chufan. Hence, the Dharma treasure he's holding is the same as Huang Chufan's, the demonic red button. The demonic red button is not large and is only a foot long. In the middle is a sacrificial ring with some demonic patterns on it, but most of them are sesame-sized black spots. The spots can't be seen with the naked eye, but by releasing one's spiritual force, one can see that under the spots are concave spots of various sizes. The concave spots are filled with talismans. With Xiao Hua's knowledge, he also saw the demonic red button, but he doesn't know what it's used for. As for the nascent soul realm cultivators of the Defeat Immortal Union, Men Cifeng, and the Golden Core realm cultivators, Hui Jin, Yi Ping, and Zhang Qi, they didn't take out any Dharma treasures. Instead, they walked toward Xiao Hua and the others and looked at Shui Chong. After Shui Chong gave the order, the leaders of the other groups also began to give orders. In each group, there were either 5 Dharma treasures, 4 Dharma treasures, or 3 Dharma treasures. No one has seen only 2 Dharma treasures. Shui Chong was not in a hurry to give orders again. Instead, he looked down at the token around his neck and waited for Du Peng's orders. There were some nascent soul realm cultivators near Du Peng, all of whom were disciples of the Defeat Immortal Union. When Xiaohua took a look, his heart skipped a beat because there were exactly 365 of them. Xiaohua didn't probe previously, but at this moment, Du Peng seemed to have already finished giving orders. He looked at the broken blade ridge in the distance, pinched his chin, and thought for a moment before raising his hand again. He pointed a few times at the ground near the mountain ridge, and the 365 disciples moved and landed in various places to form a Dharma array. The Dharma array was in the shape of a pentagon, and the 365 disciples stood there neatly. It seemed that the distance between each disciple was similar. Of course, nearly half of the disciples were floating in midair. Du Peng saw that the disciples had set up the array formation, and as they activated their dermic powers, waves of fluctuations were emitted from the disciples. After the fluctuations gathered in the center of the Dharma array, they condensed into one and then rushed towards the broken blade ridge. Du Peng nodded in satisfaction and turned to look at the other disciples who were already prepared. He said with a smile, "Everyone, the broken blade ridge is already in front of us, and the lost place is also close at hand. If possible, we can reach the barren land of immortal cultivators at this time tomorrow, so now, let's practice the teleportation flying boat. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to the starting point to subscribe to support it, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all forms of support." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.